Chapter 76. The two security guards pointed their guns at Lianping. This was because Lianping gave them the most dangerous feeling, especially when he casually threw the person over. But they didn't want to shoot. After all, there were people invited by Xiao Laikong. Just as they were hesitating, the girl behind them was still urging them to go and capture the person. On the other hand, Lianping and Li Qian looked indifferent and calm. They just looked at the security guards and the girl coldly. As long as they opened fire, their lives wouldn't be in their hands. Just as they were about to jump at each other's throats, a cough broke the deadlock. Xiao Laikong landed from the sky and stood between the two groups of people. He snorted and shouted at the security guards. "What are you doing? Pointing your guns at me?" "General, General." The two security guards hurriedly put their guns back into their holsters, saluted, and retreated to the side. The girl behind him immediately shouted, "Grandpa, what are you doing? They were bullying me." "Okay, Yun, it's all a misunderstanding." Xiao Laikong turned to Lianping and said, "I'm sorry, I've been too busy recently. I forgot to tell my granddaughter that you will be staying here for a while." After that, he pointed to the girl as if he didn't see the three people with cold faces and said, "Xiao Yun, my granddaughter." He then pointed to Lianping and Li Qian and introduced them. "Yun, this is Lianping and Li Qian. They will be staying here while they are in Tianjing." Lianping didn't say anything. Only Li Qian forced a smile and said, "It seems that it's really a misunderstanding. Hello, Yun." Xiao Yun sat in the car and sneered, "Don't call me that. I didn't agree that you can stay here." She shouted at Xiao Laikong, "Grandpa, I don't want them to stay in my house. Chase them to a hotel, a guest house, anywhere. Anyway, they're not allowed to stay in my house." "What did you say?" Upon hearing this, Xiao Yekong's face stiffened, and the surrounding temperature seemed to drop by a few degrees. After all, he was a person who held great power for many years. Once he got angry, the pressure was not something that ordinary people could bear. Seeing Xiao Yekong's stern face, Xiao Yun was like a sealed amber, not daring to move. However, seeing that Xiao Yun was frightened by him, Xiao Laikong immediately came to his senses. He forced a smile and said, "Yun, don't be naughty. Lianping and Li Qian are guests. You have to treat them well." "I don't want to," Xiao Yun cried out like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. "I don't want other people to live in my house." With that, she slammed on the accelerator and the red sports car rushed out. After a few seconds, even the shadow of the car could not be seen. Xiao Laikong turned his head and ordered, "You guys go first." The two security guards walked away as if they had been granted amnesty. Xiao Laikong helplessly said to Lianping, "Sorry, my granddaughter is too naughty. She made a fool of herself in front of you. Aren't you going to chase after her?" Lianping opened his mouth and asked. Xiao Laikong smiled and shook his head. He led the two people into the courtyard. "I was the one who brought Yin up. I was too busy in the past and didn't have time to take care of her. By the time I realized something was wrong, I couldn't do anything about it. I didn't expect that after working hard all my life, my granddaughter would become the daughter of an official." Li Qian was very curious about where Xiao Yun's parents went. However, in front of a big shot like Xiao Laikong, she didn't dare to ask questions. However, Lianping didn't think so and asked directly, "What about her parents? Where did they go?" Xiao Laikong stopped and looked at Lianping. He said, 10 years ago, we were at war with the Ice Fortress. The League of Stars ambushed the Xia Dragonfinch's headquarters, and many people died. Yun's parents also passed away at that time." "That battle," Lianping asked curiously, "was it very tragic?" Xiao Yekong's voice revealed a trace of vicissitudes. "It was very tragic. The headquarters wasn't in Tianjing at that time. 99% of the combat personnel in the base died, including many children. They were all children of their families. Yun was able to survive because many soldiers risked their lives." As if sensing the heavy atmosphere, Xiao Laikong began to introduce the courtyard with a smile. "I planted the orchard outside. Inside is the lawn. Over there is the garage. The car keys are on the workbench in the garage. You can drive whichever car you want. By the way, do you have a driver's license?" Li Qian nodded. Lianping shook his head. "No, but I know how to drive." "Okay, I'll get someone to get one for you another day." Xiao Likong opened the door of the villa. The house is a little old. Don't mind it. Just treat it as your own home. You can stay in the guest room on the second floor. There's a private bathroom and a shower. The kitchen is next to the living room. You can cook yourself. If you want to eat anything, you can also call the property management. Originally, I arranged for you to stay in a hotel, but I think it's more convenient to stay at home. That's why I brought you here. Sorry to trouble you, Li Qian said gratefully. It's nothing. By the way, if there's anything you don't like or need in your room, just call the property management and ask them to change it. Okay, we will, Li Qian said. But speaking of which, General, you look really young. You don't look like someone who has a granddaughter at all. I'm curious too. Li Onping sat on the sofa and glanced at the photos on the counter. There were photos of Xiao Likong and Xia Yunyan. There was also a man and a woman. They should be Xia Yunyan's parents who had passed away. Xiao Likong laughed. I'm actually over 70 years old. But once my ability reaches level 5, my body will be transformed by energy and psychic energy. It's normal for me to look a little younger. It's normal for my lifespan to be several times longer than normal. He didn't forget to recommend the importance and benefits of practicing psychic energy and ability to Li Onping from time to time. I thought you looked similar to your doppelganger. At this time, Xiao Likong had the image of a thin scholar. Compared to the strange appearance of the phantom dragon doppelganger in Jadeite City, he looked more simple and amiable. How is that possible? Xiao Likong suddenly stared at Li Onping. Speaking of which, you punched me in Jadeite City and Fong Qi's death. We haven't settled the score yet, have we? I was wrong in that matter. What do you want to do about it? I now have the power of the 4 dragons: wind, rain, thunder, and lightning. How about we fight now? After saying that, Xiao Likong looked at Li Onping with a playful expression. Do you think you could defeat me? Li Onping said. Let's fight. Where? The lawn outside will do. It's not a battle of life and death anyway. We just need to determine the winner. After saying that, Xiao Likong stood up impatiently and strode out the door. This time, he had to beat Li Onping into submission. He had to teach this kid the correct outlook on life and values so that he would obediently work for the Xiao Dragonfinch. On the other side, Li Onping also stood up, not to be outdone. He walked to the lawn outside the house with Xiao Likong. Li Qian looked at the two of them, not knowing what to do. She didn't know why they would suddenly start fighting. Weren't they just chatting? Unfortunately, the two of them, whether it was Li Onping or Xiao Likong, would not listen to her and obediently sit back down to drink tea. Li Qian could only follow them out with a worried expression. On the lawn, under the setting sun, Xiao Likong and Li Onping stood facing each other. The wind blew across the lawn, and it seemed to bring out a wave. Xiao Likong took off his shirt, revealing his strong muscles. Then, lightning flashed and whirlwinds rose and fell around his body, appearing and disappearing. Xiao Likong said loudly, My ability is to have 8 dragon clones. As long as one of my clones still exists, I can be reborn even if I die. So, Li Onping, when we fight later, use all your strength. Don't say that you went easy on me when you lose. You don't have to say that. Before he even finished speaking, Li Onping had already appeared behind Xiao Likong with a swoosh. At this moment, a loud bang came from where he was originally standing. Amidst the loud bang, Li Onping's fist had already landed on Xiao Likong's body. However, Xiao Likong seemed to have predicted the result. He tilted his head slightly and dodged Li Onping's fist. Then, a whirlwind rose from under his feet and he flew into the sky. This is to predict the opponent's movements in advance through the opponent's psychic chi reaction. Xiao Likong's voice came from above. Li Onping looked up and found that the other party had already flown more than 50 meters. Li Onping was about to jump when his chest suddenly tightened. Then, he heard the sound of wind blowing. There seemed to be something dangerous gathering in the atmosphere. Boom! A bolt of lightning fell from the sky and hit Li Onping directly. Before he could react, lightning fell one after another, all concentrated on Li Onping's body. In an instant, Li Onping was turned into a man of electricity. No matter how fast you are, can you be faster than lightning? Unless you can predict my movements in advance, you definitely can't dodge this attack. In midair, Xiao Liekong's body was overflowing with electricity. He was like the king of thunder, shooting out bolts of lightning from his hands and hitting Li Onping's body. Seeing Li Onping's hands and feet trembling under the continuous lightning strikes, Xiao Liekong mocked. I know your body is very strong, but no matter how strong your body is, you'll still be paralyzed after being hit by lightning. Then, with a flash of lightning, Xiao Liekong appeared in front of Li Onping. His right hand was filled with endless electricity and struck Li Onping's chest like a thunderbolt. With a loud boom, Li Onping was sent flying over 100 meters away. He landed on the ground, motionless, and his body emitted a charred smell. Ah! Li Qian screamed and was about to rush toward Li Onping. However, it was stopped by a whip formed from lightning. Don't go, it's not over yet, Xiao Liekong said and walked toward Li Onping. He won't die so easily. Hearing this, Li Qian looked at Li Onping and found that he was slowly getting up. Although his body was in tatters, the places that were originally charred by the lightning were healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. He stared intently at Xiao Liekong, who was walking over. Although he was half kneeling on the ground, his eyes emitted endless fighting spirit. Chapter 77. Xiao Liekong looked at Li Onping and shook his head. I know why you came to Tianjing. Upholding justice, punishing evil, and eliminating evil. I guess that's what you're here for. Let's not talk about the correctness of this for now. Do you think you have the power to do this? You'll know after you try. Bang! The sand under Li Onping's feet exploded into a cloud of mist. He had already rushed towards Xiao Liekong again, but this time he did not directly throw a punch. Instead, he kept circling Xiao Liekong. Xiao Liekong looked at Li Onping, who left behind afterimages in the air and could no longer be seen with the naked eye. He first nodded, then shook his head. Your speed is very fast, but your intention to attack is too easy to detect. His body was like a piece of paper blown by the wind. He casually dodged Li Onping's punches and continued. Your psychic qi is moving purely by instinct. The direction of movement and the position of your punches are all clearly sensed by me. As Xiao Liekong spoke, Li Onping stomped hard on the ground as he ran. Mud, dust, and grass were all squeezed out by a huge force and filled the air, blocking Xiao Liekong's vision. However, no matter how Li Onping punched, he still could not hit Xiao Liekong. I know what you're thinking. While I was in Jadeite City, I only had a phantom dragon doppelganger, so I couldn't react to your speed. But here, boom, like an air bomb, a whirlwind exploded with Xiao Liekong as the center, sweeping away all the dust in front of him. Psychic qi can let me sense your intentions. Thunder and lightning can increase the speed of my body. Wind can help my body move. I can also sense everything in the air. After Xiao Liekong finished speaking, he snapped his fingers with his right hand. The electric light formed a ring with his body as the center and spread out in all directions. Li Onping was forced to retreat. This is the shape of thunder and lightning combined with psychic qi. It can make the violent thunder and lightning easier for me to control. The ring of lightning expanded for a full 50 meters before disappearing without a trace. Within the Xiao Dragonfinch, there are two people who are as strong as me. There's even someone who's stronger than me. Xiao Liekong looked mockingly at Li Onping, who was standing motionlessly in the distance. You can't even defeat me, who has 4 dragon strength. How are you going to carry out your so-called chivalrous deeds and reward the good and punish the evil? Not to mention the social unrest these actions may cause. I'm afraid you'll be arrested soon after you do it. The power of the state apparatus is far beyond your imagination. As Xiao Liekong spoke, the lightning on his body became even brighter. From time to time, a lightning dragon would emerge from the clouds above his head. Beneath his feet, a whirlwind was dragging him up about a meter off the ground. Coupled with the thunderous sound he emitted when he spoke, he looked like the god of thunder. If he was in some remote mountainous area, he would probably be worshipped as a god. Li Qian was extremely worried. She had thought that Li Onping was strong enough, but now that she saw Xiao Liekong's abilities, she knew how scary it was. The other party casually manipulated the lightning and the hurricane, as if he was playing with Li Onping. Unexpectedly, Li Onping only smiled coldly when he heard this. All right, the warm-up is almost over. The next moment, Li Onping's muscles suddenly swelled, and he transformed into a small giant that was more than 2 meters tall. He's indeed very powerful. In my normal state, if I use my full strength, I should be able to hit him. But that's not enough. This was the conclusion Li Onping came to after the test just now. If I use my full strength, I should be able to defeat the current Xiao Laikong. Let's give it a try first. At this moment, Xiao Laikong felt an astonishing sense of threat coming from Li Onping's body. There was also a seething sense of malice, as if countless people were in agony and in despair. Xiao Laikong felt as if he was once again seeing the hell he had seen in Li Onping's mind when he was in the Jadeite city. Then a sonic boom rang out. Li Onping's movement surpassed the speed of sound. His speed was so fast that the air could not get out of his way in time and could only be compressed tightly together. The air that was compressed together formed a layer of wave-like substance in front of his body. If one were to look at it in slow motion, they would be able to see something that looked like a clump of clouds appearing before Li Onping. Li Onping, on the other hand, seemed to be moving forward with a wall. If his body was not strong enough, he would have been smashed into pieces in a matter of seconds. Although Xiao Laikong could foresee that his opponent was going to attack his chest through his chi, it was useless. We tried his best to dodge to the side. The sound waves from sound had just reached his ears. Li Onping had already passed by his body. Even if he could foresee it in advance, in the face of Li Onping, who had surpassed the speed of sound, he did not even have a chance to react. Xiao Laikong subconsciously touched his right cheek, and a faint trace of blood appeared. He did not even know when he had been hit. Not only that, but things were not that simple. After surpassing the speed of sound, Li Onping's movement caused the air pressure to change and caused the air vibrations, which were also sound waves, to be unable to catch up with his speed. Therefore, the air vibrations were superimposed and formed a destructive vibration wave. This was the so-called shock wave, or rather, vacuum wave. Rumble. The shock wave swept through Xiao Laikong's body. Large pieces of grass and stones were lifted up. Li Onping then rushed in the direction of the orchard. Wherever he passed, more than 200 meters in a straight line, all the trees were destroyed, leaving only a bare passage. At the end of the passage, Li Onping finally stopped. He was half squatting on the ground, and his body had returned to its original size. His hands and feet were all covered with bloody marks, which were the traces of the shock wave, or rather, the shock wave, after his body hit the air. It was the first time that Li Onping had used full force to sprint, and even he was shocked by his speed. The sound barrier, the sound cone, the shock wave, all these things that suddenly appeared made him unable to react. Not only did he not control the direction, but he also missed Xiao Laikong and did not stop in time, destroying a large area of the orchard and lawn. On the side, Li Qian stared blankly at the scene in front of her, which was like a hurricane passing through, and was so scared that she could not speak. Even Xiao Laikong was speechless when he saw all this. Rubbing his arms, Xiao Laikong got up from the ground. Li Onping's supersonic speed seemed to be very powerful, but the most powerful thing was the destructive power of his own body. As for the shock wave produced, it would at most shatter the eardrums of ordinary people. Of course, if Li Onping could use supersonic speed to actively create shock waves, but now, what was in front of them was only the destructive power caused by Li Onping's passing. If it was in ancient times, Li Onping would be facing an army of thousands of people, and Li Onping would probably only need a few sprints to defeat the army. Then, there was the sound of cars coming, and exclamations of surprise were suppressed in their throats. Several security guards trotted to Xiao Laikong, looked at his tattered body, and whispered, "General, are you okay?" "I'm fine." Xiao Laikong shook his head, took a deep look at Li Onping, and ordered to the side, "Get ready to repair the lawn and the orchard." "Yes." "Are you hungry?" Xiao Laikong said to Li Onping, who was already walking over. "Let's have a meal together." "It's at my house. What do you want to eat?" "I'll call an order." "More meat is fine." Li Onping called Li Qian back to the villa together. Looking at his appearance, his physical injuries had already healed. Half an hour later, Li Onping and Xiao Laikong had already showered changed their clothes, and sat at the dining table. The table was filled with the specialties of Xia. The most eye-catching thing was a whole roasted lamb in the middle of the table, which was ordered at Li Anping's request. At the dining table, the three of them seemed to have a lot on their minds and didn't speak, but ate in silence. "This dish is really delicious. Is it a Tianjin specialty?" Li Qian smiled and pointed to a dish. He was worried that the two of them wouldn't get along well after the fight, so he wanted to adjust the atmosphere. Xiao Laikong was so old and had experienced so many struggles. How could he not understand Li Qian's thoughts? He gave her a reassuring smile and said, "This restaurant's cooking is average. Next time I'll take you to the base's cafeteria. There are all the top chefs in the country, and this dish is even better." The two of them began to talk. Xiao Laikong asked them how they were doing in Jadeite City, and Li Qian asked Xiao Laikong about the situation in Tianjin. Although Li Anping still didn't speak much, the atmosphere wasn't as tense as it was at the beginning. Suddenly, Li Anping put down his bowl and chopsticks and said to Xiao Laikong, "Teach me how to control my qi and how to improve my abilities. Although I won't join the Xia Dragonfinch, I won't be your enemy either." Li Qian's mouth moved, and she wanted to say a few words of support, but she didn't say anything. After all, Xiao Laikong still didn't know about her relationship with Li Anping. If she tried to persuade him here, it would seem a little too enthusiastic. Moreover, if Xiao Laikong wasn't willing to teach Li Anping after the fight, then it would be useless for her to say a few more words. Xiao Laikong heard this and didn't say anything. The atmosphere in the cafeteria was so heavy that it could drip water. Just when Li Qian thought that Xiao Laikong was going to refuse, "To be honest, after seeing your performance today, I was really shocked. With my current strength of 4 dragons, I don't dare to say that I can beat you, but I also feel that if you don't join the Xia Dragonfinch, it will be a great loss for us." Xiao Laikong said, "Let's talk." Chapter 78. What do you think of this country? What do you think of us? Xiao Laikong asked. "Why are you asking me this?" Li Anping was surprised. "I know what you're thinking. We're high and mighty people who only know how to fight for power, corruption, and maintain stability. We let the evildoers go unpunished and let the rich occupy more than half of the country's wealth. We let the poor be exploited and oppressed. Isn't that the case?" Li Anping looked coldly at Xiao Laikong. Li Qian on the side became nervous again, fearing that the two would fight again. "Let me show you something." Xiao Laikong walked to the living room and brought a tablet in front of Li Anping. Li Anping opened it and found that it was about some senior officials who were secretly arrested and had their assets frozen. There were also many cases of rich people who were under house arrest because of fraud, tax evasion, embezzlement of state assets, and suspected insider trading. "We're not doing anything like you think. On the contrary, we've been doing it quietly and secretly," Xiao Laikong said. "Just the Xia Dragonfinch alone, excluding the espers who are in charge of fighting, has more than 10,000 intelligence agents in the country, including the Disciplinary Commission, the Anti-Corruption Bureau, the Investigation Bureau, the Military Intelligence Bureau, and so on. There are at least 150,000 intelligence agents in the country. We know a lot more than you think, but knowing the problem doesn't mean we can solve it." Li Anping seriously looked at the information on the tablet. Xiao Liekong's voice sounded in his ears. "We also know that there's a problem with the Shang and Kingdom, but can we just kill him directly? How bad would the impact be? Not to mention the officials. Even in Zhongdu, if Shang Jinbang falls, you know how much work we have to do." Li Anping frowned, but didn't rush to answer. Which official doesn't want their country to be strong? What's more, in our position, how many people are always thinking about fighting for power? But our country is too big. 10 million square kilometers and over 2 billion people. Any change or decision will affect tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or even millions of people. This is not as simple as killing a few people. Therefore, we can only change it bit by bit and plan it bit by bit. Because we're doing this for the 2 billion people of Xia. We can't take any risks. Seeing that Li Anping didn't say anything, Xiao Laikong continued, "And we're not the only country in this world. Ice Fortress has been having border friction with us every month in the north. In the south, Baiwei, Flan, and more than a dozen other countries have stopped fighting and are all staring at us. There's also the Sun Archipelago in the West Sea. The issue of sea power between Donyang and us is still unresolved. Under such circumstances, if there is any domestic turmoil, it will cause a new round of changes in the international situation. Perhaps the entire Xiao regime would be overthrown. But now, at least most of the people were living better and better lives. Under such circumstances, do you think we can take the risk for such a small group of people? Seeing that Li Anping nodded, Xiao Laikong looked at him solemnly. I don't want to imprison you or control you. I just want this country to become better. I understand what you're saying. Li Anping looked at Xiao Laikong seriously. But I can't stand evil growing in front of me. I also think that a simple compromise will not bring Xia to greatness. Of course, Xiao Laikong said, we also support you in your fight against those villains and scum. I believe that with your character, you won't kill the innocent. You also won't deliberately cause social unrest and give our neighbors an opportunity to take advantage of. After saying that, Xiao Laikong stared at Li Anping. Li Anping looked at him for a while and finally couldn't help but turn his head. Don't worry. I promise you that I won't go too far. Thank you. Xiao Laikong smiled. On behalf of the country and the people, I thank you. So, Li Anping promised Xiao Laikong that he wouldn't casually kill people again. At least, he would provide a good enough reason to kill the other party before he killed them. This was especially true for famous and influential officials and rich people. Even if he killed them, he would immediately notify the Xia Dragonfinch and have them deal with the aftermath as soon as possible. In that case, I will send a team to contact you in a few days. They will be responsible for communication between you and the Xia Dragonfinch. Li Anping said coldly, No need. Don't worry, I will keep my promise. Xiao Laikong smiled. Li Anping, you are a superhuman. If you really want to do something into Xia and Tianjing, you definitely can't avoid the Xia Dragonfinch. Li Anping thought for a while and glanced at Li Qian. Then let Li Qian be in charge of this matter. Oh, Xiao Laikong looked at Li Qian in surprise. He didn't expect the two of them to have a good relationship. He said, Okay. Sure enough, it was the right decision to send a beauty over. After all, Li Anping is still very young, and Li Qian is also very beautiful. If the two of them could be together, Li Anping and the Xia Dragonfinch will be even more bonded. In that case, in the future, Xiao Laikong shook his head and sighed that he was thinking too much. He said, Speaking of which, this is your first time in Tianjing, right? So, where do you want to go? Nanshan Park, Jiuxing Bridge, Art Gallery, Tianjing University. There are quite a lot of fun places here. Not interested. Li Anping's answer was not out of Xiao Liekong's expectations. When are you going to start teaching me, Nianqi? Since you're in such a hurry, let's start tomorrow. However, you should really go out more often. Otherwise, if you continue like this, you'll become more like an old man than I am. Li Qian also chimed in, You should go out for a walk. At least you can familiarize yourself with the terrain and understand the people. She really wanted to go out with Li Anping to have fun. It would be even better if they went on a date. Li Anping looked at Li Qian awkwardly and said, Let's talk about it later. Oh, right, I almost forgot. Xiao Laikong suddenly took out a black credit card and threw it to Li Anping. The annual quota is 100 million. Each transaction cannot exceed 10 million. It should be enough for you. Li Anping didn't say much and accepted it. He knew that the government was afraid that he would do something for the sake of money. They also wanted to monitor his actions through the transaction records. There's also this. Xiao Laikong handed Li Anping a pitch-black phone. The military developed the Nokia Model 3. It's resistant to falling, explosion, and impact. It's most suitable for a close combat ability user like you. The next morning, on the lawn in the courtyard, Li Anping and Xiao Laikong stood facing each other. Since ancient times, according to the origin of the ability and the reason for its creation, people have divided the abilities into 3 categories: mutation, parasitism, bloodline, domain, ancient, and extraterrestrial, Xiao Laikong explained. Although the 6 major abilities have different reasons for their creation, there's one thing they all have in common. Qi, Li Anping said softly. That's right, Qi. Xiao Laikong nodded. As long as it's an ability user above level 0, no matter which of the 6 major abilities, they will have Qi. Qi represents the evolution of the body and the mind. Although there is still no scientific method that can allow ordinary people to detect Qi, it does indeed exist in our world. Ability is talent, and psychokinesis can maximize your talent. As he spoke, Xiao Laikong raised his right hand. Li Anping felt Qi continuously flowing out of his body and gathering on his right hand. The psychokinesis you possess at the first energy level can strengthen your physical body, increasing your destructive power and defense. However, it can increase your strength and speed. Your pure physical strength and speed will remain the same after being covered with Qi. Strength won't increase out of thin air. Then, more and more Qi covered Xiao Liekong's right hand, like a raging fire burning on his hand. After reaching the second energy level, your physical and mental strength will increase again, and the quality of your Qi will also increase. You will find that Qi can start to strengthen your ability. And after reaching the third energy level, the quantitative change finally leads to a qualitative change. As Xiao Laikong spoke, he threw a punch forward. The Qi mass in his hand was like a falling meteor, smashing into the grass under his feet. Boom! It looked like a landmine explosion. The place where the Qi mass hit exploded, sending countless grass and stones flying. After reaching the third energy level, the Qi you have can start to affect the material world independently, no longer needing a physical body. You can just use pure Qi. In this level, there are even experts who can use Qi to block bullets. Li Anping thought of Kano. His Qi seemed to be able to affect the material world independently. And after reaching the fourth energy level, there is a new difference. Before Xiao Laikong finished speaking, a bolt of lightning suddenly shot out from his raised right hand. That bolt of lightning was like a sword of light, shooting out a distance of 50 meters and then stopping. Xiao Laikong waved the 50-meter-long sword of lightning and said, "The fourth energy level's Qi is more closely integrated with your ability. For example, right now, my originally simple discharge ability has condensed one of the world's most violent powers into a sword of lightning through Qi. Focus your Nianqi on your eyes." Hearing this, Li Anping immediately did as he was told. The sword that was entirely made of thunder and lightning changed its appearance in his eyes. Not only was there lightning in the sword, but there was also a large amount of Qi gathered. It was because of the Qi that the lightning became something like a solid. But at the same time, the lethality and characteristics of the lightning did not change much. Li Anping could imagine that if he was hit by this sword of lightning, not only would his body be cut, but the numbness and high temperature of the lightning would also appear at the same time. This is the simplest application of Qi superimposing on ability to produce changes. After reaching the fourth level, due to the differences in each person's ability, personality, experience, and thinking, the form of the ability will have various changes. The ability user strength will also be greatly improved at this stage. Li Anping thought, "My ability is to strengthen myself by devouring souls and bodies. I wonder how I can use Qi to change after reaching the fourth energy level." Xiao Liekong's eyes suddenly became complicated as he looked at Li Anping. Although Qi can increase an ability user's strength through cultivation, an individual's talent is probably the guarantee of where an ability user can go in the end. He suddenly sighed. "You're still a level 1 ability user, right?" Seeing Li Anping nod, he continued, "When you reach the first energy level, you already have the strength of a level 4 ability user. Your ability seems to be first in line." Xiao Laikong thought that this was the advantage of Li Anping's ability, which greatly enhanced the body. However, he would never have thought that Li Anping became stronger by eating people. The level of ability could not measure Li Anping's combat strength at all, even if he remained at the first energy level. As long as he ate enough people, Li Anping would be invincible. "First in line? What's that?" Li Anping asked. "Aha! I said before that an ability user's talent represents his limit. Sometimes, as long as the ability is strong enough, even a level 0 ability user could defeat a level 3 ability user. In order to distinguish the threat level of different abilities, more than 20 years ago, various large organizations jointly issued an ability ranking. Xiao Likong said, for example, animal communication and fluorescent body are the weakest abilities, ranked 5th in line. The strongest abilities are ranked 1st in line. Oh, Li Onping's eyes showed curiosity. Then in the world now, what's the strongest ability of 1st in line? Chapter 79. The strongest ability? Xiao Likong murmured, as if he had thought of something. In the ability sequence, not all the abilities in the world are collected. After all, not all ability users will reveal their abilities. Often, only those who are too famous or have abilities that don't need to be hidden will take the initiative to reveal their abilities. The abilities of the 6 major systems all exist in the first sequence. But if you want to talk about the strongest, according to the available information, there's indeed such a domain-type ability that is recognized as the most threatening ability. Xiao Likong suddenly asked Li Onping, 50 years ago, there was a disaster in the Western continent. Have you heard of it? It was mentioned in the history textbooks. Could it be? Li Onping also thought of something, and there was some disbelief in his eyes. The first level 5 ability user in history, mobile natural disaster, Demir Tanner. His ability is to control magnetic fields. Xiao Likong said he can control the Earth's magnetic field to change the ionosphere in the sky, control the collision of high-energy particles in the atmosphere, change the temperature of the stratosphere, and even change the magnetic poles. Li Onping looked at Xiao Likong with a blank face and suddenly said with a little embarrassment, "Can you make it simpler?" "Oh." Xiao Likong laughed and said, "I made it too complicated. Simply put, by controlling magnetic fields, he can control rainfall, create floods, and create droughts. He can also create hurricanes and turn cities into ruins. He can also create lightning storms or heat up the atmosphere to shoot down objects in the air. He can even use microwaves to transmit heat into the atmosphere to completely isolate all communication and radar systems. This is just what he did in the beginning." Xiao Likong sighed and said, 50 years ago, he was the first person to reach level 5. No one knew how strong an ability user at this level was. When everyone really faced the threat of Demir, he had already grown to a terrifying level. Changing the magnetic poles to create artificial earthquakes, using aurora currents to set up virtual antennas, releasing electromagnetic radiation over a large area, and even emitting electromagnetic waves of specific frequencies to change and control people's emotions. Volcanoes, tsunamis, earthquakes, tornadoes, flash floods, and mudslides. In just 1 year, more than 30 million people around the world had died from the disasters created by Demir. In the end, he attempted to invert the north and south magnetic poles of the entire planet to introduce solar wind, blowing away the entire atmosphere and killing all humans. Phew, looks like this person is a madman. Li Onping exhaled, but it looks like he was stopped. After the investigation, it was revealed that he had strong antisocial and anti-human emotions. He wanted to destroy the entire human race, and in fact, he almost succeeded. Xiao Likong looked at Li Onping and said, "Until now, all the major organizations in the world still recognize Demir's ability as the strongest ability in the first sequence. However, 50 years had passed, and no one else had been found who had the ability to control magnetic fields on such a large scale and at such a high intensity. Of course, there were also some ability users who believed that his ability was not the strongest, but the most famous and the most insane. There were also people who suggested that there were people in the world who had the ability to stop time, and even people who had the ability to travel through time. This was the strongest ability. Are there really people who have the ability to stop time? Li Onping asked curiously. I don't know. Even if there were, it would be difficult to prove. Xiao Likong shook his head. But currently, among the ability users that I know of, there are no ability users who have the ability to stop time. All right, let's end the topic of the ability sequence here. Let's return to the problem of psychic energy, Xiao Likong said. Your current psychic energy can be used to attack, defend, restrain, and investigate. Today, let's start with attacking. Xiao Likong focused his psychic energy on his right hand and said to Li Anping, "Learn from me. Focus your attention and slowly focus the psychic energy in your body on your hand." Li Anping followed Xiao Liekong's instructions and felt the psychic energy slowly concentrate on his arm. However, it did not gather much before it suddenly dispersed and flowed through his whole body again. Don't be depressed. You can't control too much in the beginning. You have to practice slowly. Psychic energy is the combination of the mind and the body. Try to control it like controlling your thoughts. After trying 4 or 5 times, Li Anping finally covered his right hand with a small ball of psychic energy. However, no matter how much he concentrated, the psychic energy in his hand did not increase. This is because the amount of psychic energy you have is too little and your control is too weak, Xiao Likong thought, and said, "How about this? You can use psychic energy to write." Xiao Likong stretched out a finger and gestured in the air. Then the psychic energy was left where his finger had drawn. Li Anping looked carefully and realized that it was Xiao Liekong's name. After he finished writing, Xiao Likong waved his hand and erased the 3 words that were written with his psychic chi. "You can write your name here," Xiao Likong said. "Write until your psychic energy is used up. Why don't you give it a try?" Li Anping nodded. He gathered psychic energy on his finger and began to write in the air. However, what was usually a simple task was now extremely difficult. Not only was the nianqi disobedient and crooked, but the nianqi in the air dissipated uncontrollably after Li Anping finished writing the word Li. Xiao Likong laughed. "Try more. You're too weak in this area. Keep writing like this, and it will increase the amount of psychic energy you have and your control over it." The amount of psychokinesis wasn't fixed either. It could increase the level of one's ability, evolve one's mind and body, and increase the amount of psychic energy. Using psychic energy often and exhausting it many times could also increase the amount of psychic energy. However, compared to increasing the amount of psychic energy through leveling up, this was much slower. Then you practice first. "I'll go back to the base. We'll continue tomorrow morning," Xiao Likong said and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, a scream came from the main door. "What's wrong with you guys?" Xia Yinyan was wearing heavy makeup. She wore black stockings and high heels as she walked towards Xiao Likong and Li Anping. From afar, she looked quite enchanting. However, Xiao Likong was not very happy to see her like this. "Why is the grass all flipped up? And why are so many trees in the orchard cut down?" Who did this?" Xia Yinyan pointed at Li Anping's nose and said, "Didn't you do something? It must be you. Great. You've only stayed at my place for 1 day, and you're already like this. If I let you stay for a few more days, wouldn't the house be torn down?" "Enough. Don't blame Li Anping. It's all my fault. I've already asked someone to fix it," Xiao Likong said coldly. "The problem is you. Look at what time it is now. You didn't come home last night and didn't answer my calls. You didn't come back until noon. Look at you. You don't look like a girl at all. Where did you go last night? What does it have to do with you? I'm already an adult. You have no right to control me." After saying that, she glared at Li Anping as if to say, "Just wait and see." Xiao Likong said angrily, "If you don't tell me, then don't go out. Stay at home every day. I'll hire a tutor for you." "What right do you have to do that?" Xia Yinyan shouted. "You're not my father. You can't control me." After saying that, Xia Yinyan regretted it. She looked at Xiao Likong blankly, not knowing what to do. Xiao Likong was also stunned. After a few seconds, he said, "Then I still have to control you. Unless you tell me where you went last night. Don't think about going anywhere in the future. And even if you don't tell me, I can still find out where you went." "You." Xia Yinyan glared at Xiao Likong. The latter looked at her coldly. After a few seconds, she said angrily, "I went drinking with Song Tian yesterday." "Song Tian?" "Grandpa Song's grandson," Xia Yinyan said angrily. "That kid is not a good person. You should avoid contact with him in the future." Xia Yinyan snorted. "He's not a good person, but at least he remembers my birthday." Xiao Liekong's eyes widened. He asked doubtfully. Yesterday was your 18th birthday? Xia Yunyan sneered. You don't even remember your own birthday. How can you remember mine? He looked at Xia Yunyan sneering as she walked toward the villa. Xia Laikong wanted to say something, but after opening his mouth several times, he still didn't say anything. Li Onping looked at him and said, Aren't you going to comfort her? Xia Laikong sighed, Forget it. It'll be fine in a few days. He walked out of the courtyard without looking back. You should practice more. We'll continue tomorrow morning. Li Onping looked at Xia Liekong's back. He didn't know if it was an illusion, but at this moment, when he looked at Xia Liekong's somewhat bleak back, he didn't feel as energetic as he did the first time he saw him. It seemed more like the back of an old man. However, Li Onping couldn't do anything about this family conflict. After thinking for a while, he continued to write with his nianqi. After a few tries, he was finally able to write Li Onping's second character. However, before he could finish writing, his nianqi broke down again. So for almost the entire day, Li Onping stood in the courtyard and wrote the 3 characters, Li Onping. Chapter 80. After writing for over an hour, Li Onping was finally able to write out the 3 words Li Onping in a crooked manner. However, in less than a second, the 3 words disappeared together. At this time, Li Onping's psychic energy was temporarily depleted. At first, he planned to rest and wait for his psychic energy to recover before continuing his training. However, he felt that his body and spirit were still very strong, so he decided to train again. The information about abilities that Xia Laikong had told him, as well as the power he had used yesterday, made Li Onping feel a sense of urgency. Knowing that there were so many powerful people in the world, for some reason, he felt that his strength was in urgent need of improvement. It was as instinctive as breathing, constantly reminding him from the inside out. You must become stronger. This was because he knew that the conflict between Xia's higher-ups was irreconcilable. Right now, he was only dealing with rich businessmen, so there was no problem with things like rape. However, if the matter involved the upper echelons of the government, perhaps the first to act would be Xia Laikong. Right now, the only way for him to become stronger, apart from training, was to absorb souls, and the most effective one was the souls of ability users. However, he was not in a hurry yet. He did not want to attract attention or suspicion, or even expose this ability. However, after gradually reaching some agreement with the Xia Dragonfinch, who was represented by Xia Laikong, he could use killing evil as a reason to absorb souls while he was at it. This way, he could secretly increase his strength and satisfy Li Onping's inner desire to punish evil. At the same time, it was in line with his usual behavior pattern. Because of the unfair treatment, he hated the dark forces of society, so it was not easy to arouse suspicion of his ability. This way, with the permission of the great Xia Dragonfinch, he could secretly increase his strength and hunt for more aptitude users, especially level 5 ability users. Absorbing ability users like Kano and Fangqi had already greatly increased his strength. He could not wait to find out how strong he would become if he could absorb a level 5 ability user. Perhaps that would allow him to not have to worry about any forces or organizations. However, now was not the time. His current strength was still a bit lacking compared to a 5th rank ability user. He still needed to lay low for a while and slowly accumulate his strength. The matter of absorbing souls had to be done slowly. He could not appear to be in a rush. Fortunately, Xia Laikong still had a strong desire to recruit Li Onping. For the time being, he would not be in danger. Thus, Li Onping began to exercise his body. First, he did 1,000 push-ups, followed by sit-ups, squats, and handstands. However, with his current physical fitness, doing these exercises was better than doing nothing. Maybe I should think about the weight. Thinking of this, Li Onping began to think while exercising. He summed up his current state, which was great strength, fast speed, and strong recovery ability. Especially after he activated his power burst state, his body's movement speed alone reached the speed of sound. This was a very powerful force. The only problem was that under the speed of sound, he did not have enough control over his body. Li Onping thought, I need to ask Xia Laikong to find me a place where I can use the speed of sound to train. This place is too easy to destroy. I also need to ask him to find me some weights. Just training like this is wasting too much time. However, he immediately thought of another thing. Since his movement speed could reach the speed of sound, then his movement speed should also be able to reach it, or even surpass it. Under the power burst state, my movement speed can reach the speed of sound. Then in my normal state, although my movement speed can't reach the speed of sound, at least my movement speed might be able to reach the speed of sound. Thinking of this, Li Onping stretched out his right hand to try. He looked around and finally looked at the sky. If he damaged the grass, he would feel bad. Li Onping kept his right hand in a knife hand posture and suddenly swung it upwards. Bang! Li Onping's right hand made a whistling sound. A gust of wind like sword energy rushed into the sky. This was a sharp shock wave created when the knife hand cut through the air at the speed of sound. However, it was like a gust of wind blowing into the sky. There was some noise when it came out, but it did not cause any damage. Li Onping looked at his palm and once again made a knife hand move in all directions. The shock wave was like a sword energy or a vacuum blade, shooting out in all directions. However, other than the frightening whistling sound, it did not have any power. At this moment, Li Onping thought that his movement speed should be faster in the power burst state. If he used the high-frequency knife, the tip of the knife would be faster, and the cutting surface of the knife would make the shock wave sharper. If his hand speed was fast enough, he could even superimpose the flow of air. Maybe the power will be good? Li Onping waved his knife hand a few more times and thought to himself, I must ask Xiao Laikon to find me a training room. The Xiao Dragonfinch has so many ability users. There should be a place like this. Otherwise, in a normal environment, there is no way to try out moves with a little bit of destructive power. Just as he was thinking about it, Li Onping realized that his qi was almost fully recovered. Li Onping calculated the time and found that it had only been a little over 10 minutes. It seemed that his super recovery ability in body and mind was also very helpful for the recovery of qi. Qi was also a combination of the two previous things. So Li Onping began to write in the air again. 10 minutes later, Li Qian also walked out of the house. She was wearing a hoodie and sweatpants, looking like a pure college student. You don't want to eat lunch? I'm not hungry, Li Onping said without turning his head. He did not stop writing at all. Li Qian looked curiously at Li Onping writing in the air. She was still a level 0 ability user and could not feel or see the existence of qi. Naturally, she did not know what Li Onping was doing. So she asked, "What are you doing?" "Practicing qi." Li Onping's answer was simple and straightforward. Li Qian nodded, not really understanding, and ran back into the house. After a while, she took a stool and put it on the lawn. She sat on the stool and watched Li Onping practice. Li Onping glanced at him, but didn't say anything and continued to practice. Almost the entire afternoon was spent with Li Onping practicing, resting, and then practicing again. Li Qian just sat on the side and watched. Sometimes she would stand up and do some exercises, but what she did was relatively simple, like stretching her legs and bending her waist. After all, her ability did not directly strengthen her body. In terms of body, her current body was no different from a normal person's. During this time, the property management staff also came once to repair the lawn. As for the orchard, they only took away the broken trees and planted new fruit trees. When the sun set in the west, Li Onping's handwriting was still crooked, but it could stay for a few more seconds. Just then, an eye-catching black sports car slowly drove in from outside the gate and let out a honk. A man wearing high-end branded clothes from head to toe got out of the car. The man's face was handsome, and he was tall. He exuded an air of superiority from head to toe, like a crane in a flock of chickens. However, the expression on his face looked a little nonchalant. In the villa, Xia Yunyan had just dressed up neatly. The black evening gown matched her snow-white, tender skin and youthful face. She looked stunning and pure. When she heard the honk, she hurriedly put down her foundation, picked up her small bag, and ran out of the house. As soon as she opened the door, she saw the man standing outside the gate. Xia Yunyan smiled and ran toward the gate. When she passed by the lawn, she could see Li Qian looking at them, and Li Onping was still gesticulating in the air. Xia Yinyan looked carefully and realized that he was practicing using Nianqi to write. When Xia Yinyan saw that the other party was still practicing this kind of basic skill and still looked like a rookie, the corner of her mouth revealed a trace of a sneer. Xia Yinyan didn't look anymore and directly walked to the man's side. "You're so beautiful today." The man looked at Xia Yinyan with appreciation. "You're very handsome today, too." "Who are they?" The man looked at Li Onping, who was still scribbling. When he saw the crooked Nianqi characters, a trace of disdain flashed in the depths of his eyes. However, the pure and beautiful Li Qian attracted more of his attention. "Two idiots. I really don't know why my grandfather let them stay here." Xia Yinyan went up and hugged the man's arm. She smiled sweetly and said, "Let's go." "Okay." After saying this, the man looked back again and got into the car with Xia Yinyan. When the sports car roared and drove away, Li Qian finally couldn't help but ask, "Who is that? He looks so rich. Do you think we should tell Xia Laikong that his granddaughter ran away with someone?" "There's no need for that." Li Onping's gaze was fixed on the words in front of him. What if something happens?" Li Qian was a little worried and said, "After all, she's still a little girl. Although she's a little rebellious, it's still a little dangerous for her to go out alone at night and not go home." "You're worried about her? How so?" Li Qian hesitated and said, It's just that she's still too young. I don't want her to be taken advantage of and let others take advantage of her. That man just now wasn't a good person. He kept looking at me with a perverted gaze. You heard that her parents died when she was young and that she was raised by a grandfather who was always busy with work. So you developed maternal sympathy, right?" Li Qian suddenly looked at Li Onping and denied. "How could there be such a thing? That little brat is so arrogant. Why would I sympathize with him?" "You don't? That's what I read in a psychology book recently. It said that when a woman sees a child who lacks parental love, it's especially easy to arouse sympathy." Li Onping said seriously while his hands were still writing. "How could there be such a thing? I think the book you read is just nonsense." Li Qian said, "How long do you need to practice this action? Are you trying to change the topic?" Li Onping was puzzled and said, "I noticed that every time you say, 'How could there be such a thing?' it's usually because you're guilty or lying." "How?" Li Qian stopped halfway and looked at Li Onping angrily. Li Onping seemed to feel Li Qian's gaze and said casually, "Don't worry. The security guards in this neighborhood are armed with pistols. They're very disciplined and have combat experience. I'm afraid they've all been in the military before. If they can let that kid in, it means that he's basically not in any danger. And Xia Yinyan, she should be an ability user too. I felt psychic energy on her." "Huh? She's an ability user too?" Li Qian said in disbelief. "I can't tell at all. Because you're only at level 0. Naturally, you can't feel his psychic energy. And since she has psychic energy, it means that her level is at least above yours." As Li Onping finished speaking, he slowly wrote the word Li. His movements were much slower than before. He was trying his best to control the flow of his psychic energy so that the words looked more neat. This required more control over psychic energy than just writing. "Her level is higher than mine." Li Qian pursed her lips and whispered, "What's the use of having a higher level? It's very useful." Although Li Qian's voice was soft, Li Onping still heard it clearly. He continued, "So, come to class with me tomorrow and see if Xia Laikong has any way to quickly improve your ability. Your ability is very strong. If your level is higher, it'll be even more useful. It'll be very helpful to me." Li Onping said a lot, but in Li Qian's ears, there was only one sentence left. "It'll be very helpful to me. Is that so?" Li Qian smiled and looked at Li Onping with satisfaction. After a while, he said, "All right, are you hungry? I'll go make dinner for you. There's a lot of ingredients here. You could try my cooking." After that, she ran back to the villa to make dinner without looking back. Li Onping was left alone on the lawn, still writing nonstop. What Li Onping didn't tell Li Qian was that not only was Xia Yinyan an ability user, but he also felt traces of psychic energy on that man's body. Chapter 81. That night, Li Onping stood on the lawn and practiced using his nianqi to write. In the beginning, his nianqi writing was short, and his words looked crooked, but he was finally able to write for a longer time. However, his handwriting still looked like it was written by a primary school student. However, Li Onping wasn't impatient, nor was he discouraged. He knew that training had to be done one step at a time, and he couldn't be impatient. Moreover, training wasn't the fastest way to increase his strength. Training was only to improve his control over his strength and enhance his combat ability. When he was familiar enough with Tianjing, or when he coordinated with the Xia Dragonfinch, he would start hunting again. Absorbing human souls, especially the souls of ability users, was the fastest way for him to become stronger. Other than eating dinner, Li Onping didn't rest much. When he was recovering his nianqi, he was also practicing his punches and kicks. Li Qian accompanied him until 11:30 at night, when she couldn't take it anymore and went to sleep. Only Li Onping was left standing on the lawn under the moonlight, quietly writing. It wasn't until 2 o'clock in the morning that the silence was broken. The sound of the door opening entered Li Onping's ears. Xia Yunyun stumbled into the room, mumbling something under her breath, but no one knew what she was talking about. From afar, Li Onping could smell the smell of alcohol. He looked at Xia Yunyun and saw that she was supporting herself with one hand by the door. Then, she suddenly began to vomit and kept vomiting towards the wall. Li Onping shook his head helplessly. He stepped forward and patted Xia Yunyun's shoulder. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Xia Yunyun shouted. Then, she lowered her head and began to vomit again. "You're drunk. Let me help you back to your room." Li Onping saw that Xia Yunyun was almost done vomiting. He reached out to touch her shoulder. However, Xia Yunyun pushed his hand away. "What are you doing? I don't want you to help me." Xia Yunyun narrowed her eyes and sized up Li Onping. "So it's you, little rookie." Seeing Li Onping frown, Xia Yunyun giggled. She was wearing a black evening gown, revealing her full, snow-white chest. When she giggled, her chest bounced up and down, making her look very sexy. She smiled and said, "Don't be unconvinced. I've been practicing the things that Xia Laikong taught you since I was 5 years old." As she spoke, Xia Yunyun raised her index finger. A wisp of smoke like qi was formed and drifted into the air. The mist formed by qi kept changing. It turned into a bird, then a kitten, then a puppy, and finally the word Xia Yunyun. It was written in a fancy style. Compared to Li Onping, it was much more skillful. In the end, Xia Yunyun gently blew at the 3 words formed by qi. The 3 words instantly turned into dust and flew in all directions, disappearing into the night. Xia Yunyun pointed at Li Onping's chest and said, "I'm in a good mood today, so I'll give you some advice. Don't practice that messed up qi anymore. Let me tell you, no matter how good your qi is, if your superpower isn't good enough, it's still not good enough. Someone else's level 1 superpower is equivalent to your level 3 superpower. No matter how hard you practice, it's useless." "Ha ha," Xia Yunyun giggled. "Superpowers depend on your F*king luck. Do you know that? Do you know that?" As she giggled, Xia Yunyun suddenly hugged Li Onping and cried. Li Onping stared blankly at Xia Yunyun hugging him and crying. The coldness he had during the battle was gone, and he was at a loss. "Are you okay? Why don't you go back to your room first?" Li Onping asked softly after a while when he realized that Xia Yunyun's crying had gradually stopped. Li Onping observed carefully and realized that Xia Yunyun had already fallen asleep. She hugged Li Onping tightly, and there was even some saliva at the corner of her mouth. With light makeup on her face, she looked like a sleeping angel. "She's cuter when she's asleep," Li Onping thought. Li Onping couldn't let Xia Yunyun hug him to sleep at the door. He could only carefully carry her and walk towards Xia Yunyun's room. "Sigh, I was wondering how Xia Laikong got that attitude of talking to himself. Is everyone in this family like this?" Although he said that, Li Onping still carried Xia Yunyun onto the bed. Originally, he wanted to leave, but when he saw the other party's drunken state and disheveled appearance, he sighed. "I owe you." Thus, he went up to take off Xia Yunyun's shoes, washed her face, and covered her with the blanket. Only then did he return to the courtyard and continue practicing his nianqi. The next morning, Li Onping didn't sleep at all. He was still energetic and stood on the lawn, practicing seriously. Now, after Li Onping finished writing his name, the name would only disappear after 20 seconds. Furthermore, the font had upgraded from that of an elementary school student to that of an ordinary person. At this moment, Xiao Laikong descended from the sky with a hearty laugh. He looked at Li Onping with satisfaction and said, "You're up so early today? I was planning to go to your room to wake you up." Li Onping didn't mention his mental and physical strength. Basically, not sleeping would not affect him. He only asked, "What are we learning today?" "I'll tell you some of the basic techniques of Nianqi. If you want to practice, you should focus on writing. When you can leave 100 names on the lawn, you'll have reached a bottleneck." Xiao Laikong thought for a moment and said, "The basic techniques of Nianqi require more practice. If you want to sublimate it, you'll have to match it with your own abilities. This will depend on your own imagination. I can only help you get started and lay a good foundation for you." Seeing Li Onping nod, Xiao Laikong continued, "For attack and defense, the most basic is to rely on the coverage of Nianqi. As for restraint and detection, the first is to restrain the Nianqi somewhere in your body so that others won't be able to sense your Nianqi. The second is to release the Nianqi and sense the distribution of the enemy's Nianqi." With that, Xiao Laikong raised his palm and released a wave of Nianqi. The Nianqi extended out like a tentacle and extended for more than 500 meters before stopping. Nianqi can affect the physical world, but it can also ignore the physical world. With that, Xiao Laikong waved his hand and swept the Nianqi 500 meters around him. The Nianqi swept past, but did not affect the houses, trees, or grass at all. When you do this, you'll be able to sense the presence of Nianqi within 500 meters. This is the simplest and most direct method of detection. At a higher level, you'll be able to sense the presence of Nianqi through gazes, hostility, and movements. You may have experienced this yourself in your past experiences. Nianqi itself comes from the body and the mind. Ability users who have Nianqi will often release Nianqi from their bodies unknowingly, especially when they're focused, nervous, focused, or angry. People of different levels usually release different amounts of Nianqi. Generally speaking, the higher the level of the person, the more Nianqi they release. Li Onping nodded. He had experienced this before. Most of the time, he felt the Nianqi in other people's bodies this way. For example, the 4 ability users in Zhongdu City, Feng Qi, and the man from yesterday. Next is to withdraw it. As Xiao Laikong spoke, he withdrew the Nianqi from his body. Then, Li Onping felt that the Nianqi in his opponent's body seemed to be gradually disappearing. It's similar to holding your breath. Stop the flow of Nianqi from all over your body and let it be in a static state, concentrating it in a certain area. However, at this time, you'll lack the defense and strengthening effect of Nianqi. Ability users will be weaker than usual. A few seconds later, Xiao Liekong's Nianqi appeared again. However, this is just like practicing holding your breath. Unless you've specially trained, ordinary people can only hold on for a very short time. I can only hold on for about 30 seconds. It's up to you whether you want to practice it or not. However, for someone like you who relies on your physical strength for close combat, I hope you'll practice it a little. It might save your life at a critical moment. Also, don't forget that the detection of Nianqi can only target Nianqi. He can only detect Nianqi. On the other hand, it's the same when you withdraw your Nianqi. They can only hide from the detection of Nianqi. They have no effect on other means of observation, such as infrared rays and satellites. After that, Xiao Laikong explained a lot of basic knowledge about Nianqi to Li Onping and guided him in his practice. Take it slow. Extend your Nianqi. Feel like you're extending your arm. Li Onping raised his hand and slowly extended his Nianqi. However, compared to Xiao Liekong's 500 meters, Li Onping's Nianqi only extended 2 meters before it stopped. If he extended it any further, the Nianqi would continue to dissipate. 2 meters? Not bad, Xiao Laikong said. Just maintain your Nianqi at a distance of 2 meters. Write with your Nianqi from 2 meters away. Li Onping nodded and slowly waved his finger. The Nianqi extended from his finger was like a pen, slowly moving in the air 2 meters away from him and leaving strokes made of Nianqi. Not bad. You can start practicing like this from now on. A distance of 2 meters is about right. The main reason you practice your control of Nianqi is to strengthen your physical body's destructive power and defensive power. Among the 6 major abilities, mutation, parasitism, and bloodline are the best for Nianqi attack and defense. As for the domain, it's most suitable for withdrawing and investigating Nianqi. When your control is good enough, the main thing is to practice using Nianqi to strengthen the power of your fists and legs and the defensive power of your body. Although it's difficult for you to exert the power of withdrawing and investigating, you still need to practice a little. After that, Xiao Likong guided Li Anping for a while and corrected Li Anping's mistakes. When Li Anping asked him how to strengthen Li Qian's ability, Xiao Likong told Li Anping that a level 0 ability user could increase their ability by continuously using their ability. Then Li Anping asked Xiao Likong to arrange a sturdy place for him to train, and Xiao Likong agreed. Then, he answered a few more questions from Li Anping and left. During this time, the situation in the eastern continent was getting more and more tense. Other than guiding Li Anping, Xiao Likong spent most of his time at the Xia Dragonfinch's base. After Xiao Likong left, Li Anping continued to practice writing until a girl's scream pierced the air. Chapter 82. He saw Xia Yunyun in her pajamas, aggressively running out of the villa, and walking in front of Li Anping. Seeing Li Anping looking at her, Xia Yunyun suddenly became weak, her face slightly red, and quickly returned to normal. Last night, were you the one who helped me back to my room? Li Anping stopped practicing, nodded and said, Yes, I saw that you were really drunk, so I carried you back to your room. Did I say anything? Xia Yunyun hurriedly asked. No, you seemed to be mumbling something, but your voice was too soft, so I didn't hear it. Xia Yunyun patted her chest, looking relieved, but the next moment she immediately became nervous, a pair of sword-like eyebrows raised high. You carried me up yesterday. Did you do anything? No, Li Anping helplessly said. Really? You didn't secretly touch me, right? You didn't take a picture, right? Xia Yunyun stared at Li Anping with wide eyes. I said no. Xia Yunyun still looked at Li Anping hesitantly. Then she suddenly whistled, and a sparrow suddenly flew out from the sky, landed on Xia Yunyun's shoulder, and chirped in her ear nonstop. Then Xia Yunyun revealed a satisfied smile, shook her shoulder, and the sparrow flew away. She looked at Li Anping and said, You're honest. Seeing Li Anping looking at her in confusion, Xia Yunyun casually said, My ability is to communicate with all kinds of animals. It's very weak and trashy. Li Anping thought, It's indeed a very weak ability, but I don't know what it's like, whether it has unexpected potential. Just now I heard from the little bird that it saw you training here, and didn't see you rest at all. You're really working hard. But there are some things that you can't do just by working hard. Xia Yunyun showed a disappointed smile and said, Ability users are the children of God, but the limit of our life is determined at the moment of birth. With my ability, no matter how hard I work, even if I reach the 5th energy level, it's useless. At this moment, there was a shout from outside the door. Yunyun, why didn't you answer my call? Open the door and let me in. He saw the man who went out with Xia Yunyun yesterday, standing at the door, shouting at Xia Yunyun on the lawn. Yunyun, why didn't you answer my call? And why did you leave without saying a word yesterday? Seeing the man walk over, Xia Yunyun also put away the disappointed expression on her face and seemed to have returned to the unruly girl that Li Anping was familiar with. You still have a nerve? Who told you to call me so early and wake me up? Don't you like Wang Yan? Go find her. Don't bother me. I want to catch up on sleep. The man shouted a few more times and saw that Xia Yunyun was still ignoring him. Suddenly, he grabbed the wall and jumped over the iron gate, chasing after Xia Yunyun. But after a few steps, he suddenly found a stream of qi in front of him. Li Anping coldly said, It's illegal to trespass private property. Get out of the way. The man glared at Li Anping and waved his hand to release a stream of qi, shattering Li Anping's qi. Then, he ran towards Xia Yunyun. Li Anping narrowed his eyes, This man's qi is about the same level as Feng Qi's. Should I subdue him? But it's not good for me to interfere with the couple's quarrel. Just then, Xia Yinyin turned around and shouted, Song Tian, stop right there. The man called Song Tian suddenly stopped. His eyes were filled with tenderness as he looked at Xia Yinyin. Yinyin, let me explain. Not interested. Xia Yinyin raised her eyebrows and said fiercely, Get out of here. Take one more step and I'll call security. Then, Xia Yinyin went straight back to her room. No matter how Song Tian shouted, she didn't come out again. Song Tian snorted coldly and suddenly turned his head to look behind him. Li Onping was crossing his arms in front of his chest, looking like he was watching a show. Song Tian looked at Li Onping and felt a little angry, especially when he saw how the other party was watching a show. A trace of murderous intent appeared in Song Tian's eyes. However, this trace of murderous intent disappeared as quickly as it came. Song Tian carefully hid it. He smiled at Li Onping and said, Hello, I'm Song Tian. How should I address you? He looked like a nice guy, as if the person who violently shattered Li Onping's qi was another person. Li Onping. The corner of Song Tian's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. I heard that Xiaoli will be staying here recently. Yes. What's wrong? Nothing, Song Tian said. There are some things that I'm afraid you don't know, so I wanted to tell you. At this moment, Li Qian suddenly walked out of the villa. She came to Li Onping and asked, What's going on? It's so noisy early in the morning. She was still wearing short-sleeved pajamas, revealing her snow-white thighs and curvy figure. Especially when paired with her sleepy appearance, there was a refreshing and refined beauty. I'm sorry to disturb this young lady. I'm Song Tian. How should I address this beautiful young lady? Song Tian saw Li Qian again, and his eyes lit up. He suppressed the desire in his heart and reached out confidently to Li Qian. However, Li Qian ignored his outstretched hand and only looked at Li Onping. Li Onping replied, He and Xia Yinyin quarreled. It's okay, you can go back to sleep. So Li Qian yawned, walked back to the villa, and continued to sleep. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even look at Song Tian. Song Tian even maintained the posture of reaching out to shake his hand. Song Tian was a little embarrassed. He retracted his hand in annoyance and stared at Li Onping. Let me introduce myself. My grandfather is Song Bang. He's General Xia's superior. Our families have been friends since we were young. Yinyin and I are childhood sweethearts. When he said that his grandfather was Song Bang, his voice was especially loud, as if he was afraid that Li Qian, who was walking towards the villa, couldn't hear him. Oh, seeing Li Onping's nonchalant attitude, he wondered if this kid didn't know about his family's power and identity as a member of the royal family. He didn't expect that Li Onping really didn't know. This had never been his concern. In Great Xia, there were 9 royal clans. Every 5 years, each of the 9 royal clans would elect a representative. Then, based on the votes, one of the 9 representatives would be chosen to decide the ownership of the throne for the next 5 years. Li Onping knew about this, but the votes weren't for all the people in the country. Only the high-ranking officials were allowed to choose. Therefore, how could the commoners tell which of the 9 great royal clans were which people belonged to the 9 great royal clans? Song Tian and his grandfather, Song Bang, happened to belong to one of the 9 royal families, the Song family. Song Tian continued, Little Li, I see that you've been practicing your Nianqi. Are you preparing to join the Xia Dragonfinch? Speaking of which, I originally planned to join the Xia Dragonfinch as soon as I came back from my studies in the Armister Federation. However, although I've been training since I was young, I only reached the 3rd level last year. Although my grandfather is in charge of the Xia Dragonfinch, he felt that I wasn't cut out for this job. I'd only embarrass him if I joined, so he didn't let me in. Oh, Li Onping still had an indifferent look on his face. Song Tian gritted his teeth and resisted the urge to slap Li Onping. If it were any other time, if anyone dared to look down on him like this, he would have killed them already. However, since Li Onping was still living in Xiao Yekong's house, Song Tian couldn't do anything to him. However, when he thought of the clumsy technique when practicing Nianqi, Song Tian secretly laughed. He said, Little Li, Since General Xia thinks so highly of you, you must be very powerful, right? I wonder what level your ability is." Li Onping frowned and said, "Level 1. He thought to himself, "This guy is really annoying. Hurry up and leave so I can train." Song Tian heard the answer he wanted to hear. His face showed a surprised and guilty expression, and he comforted him. "Ah, I'm sorry, but your level is low, so you can be molded. I see that General Xia thinks so highly of you. You must have something special about you." Then he kindly reminded him, "Little Li, I had a little conflict with Yun Yun yesterday. She doesn't want to see me now. Although she also has a level 3 ability, I'm still worried about her." Song Tian especially emphasized level 3, as if he was afraid that Li Onping wouldn't notice. Li Onping could only listen helplessly. But on Song Tian's side, he saw that the other party was silent and self-abased. He continued, "You must know that we've been childhood sweethearts. I'm afraid that we'll get married in a few years, so I want you to take good care of her. But this girl is just too kind-hearted. She's always nice to everyone. Little Li, don't misunderstand." "Got it," Li Onping said grumpily. Song Tian looked at the other party's embarrassed anger and felt that he had already looked down on the other party in terms of background, status, and strength. He had also dispelled the possibility that the other party was a toad lusting after a swan's meat. Therefore, Song Tian didn't intend to continue provoking the other party. He waved his hand as a farewell to Li Onping. The funny thing was that Song Tian thought that Li Onping was just a level 1 rookie. He didn't know that the other party was a monster whose combat strength couldn't be measured by ability level. If Song Tian really knew the other party's combat strength, he probably wouldn't have dared to say the words he had just said. Seeing Song Tian climb over the wall and leave, Li Onping continued to practice. He controlled Nianqi Yin to reach out 2 meters to right. Half an hour later, Li Qian had finished washing up and was neatly dressed. She said to Li Onping, "That Song Tian doesn't look like a good person. The second generation of government officials are all like that." Li Onping seemed to recall the past. He continued, "But Xia Yunyun's matter has nothing to do with us. If anyone wants to take care of it, it should be Xia Laikong." "Understood. I just thought about it, because I have nothing to do. You'll have something to do soon." Li Onping smirked. "I asked Xia Laikong, if a level 0 ability user wants to level up, the best way is to use more abilities. When you were in Jadeite City, you used it many times but still didn't level up. This means that it's very difficult for you to level up. You need more practice." Li Qian said with a bitter face. "How do I practice?" Although she didn't want to, since Li Onping wanted her to contact him, Li Qian still insisted on practicing. "Aren't you in charge of my contact with the Xia Dragonfinch? In a few days, I'll get Xia Laikong to send you out. You'll be working with the Xia Dragonfinch for a while now. You can familiarize yourself with their staff. Also, use this time to interview all the normal people and level 0 ability users you see." Li Qian shouted with a long face. "This can be considered as paving the way for my next hunt." Li Onping smiled at Li Qian. "It's all up to you." The latter immediately showed a satisfied smile and nodded firmly. "Okay, leave it to me." Chapter 83. 2 weeks had passed, and Li Onping's training had also changed. He was standing on the lawn, and within 100 meters of him, on the grass and in the air, were densely covered with his name. There seemed to be at least tens of thousands of them. From afar, it looked like some kind of spell or seal had covered Li Onping's surroundings. As the thought flashed through his mind, the words instantly collapsed, disintegrated, and turned into countless fragments that disappeared into the air. Li Onping felt that his control and growth of Nianqi had reached a limit, the limit of his body and spirit. Even if he continued to train, the enhancement to him would be minimal. He knew that he was improving very quickly, and he guessed that this was probably because his ability strengthened his body and spirit by devouring the body and spirit. Nianqi was the unification of the body and spirit, so his foundation was naturally stronger than ordinary people's, and training was also easier. Thus, Li Onping retracted the Nianqi on his fingers. Since this training had reached a bottleneck, he was probably stronger than ordinary level 1 ability users, but not yet at the level of level 2 ability users. Thus, from today onwards, Li Onping would no longer train to write. He clenched his fists and took a deep breath. The next moment, Nianqi all over his body emerged like flames from his body and gathered in his hands. When ordinary ability users fought, their entire body would be covered in Nianqi, attacking and defending as one. For example, if the opponent's fist was aimed at his abdomen, then he would concentrate his Nianqi on his abdomen. If he wanted to kick the opponent, then he would concentrate his Nianqi on his leg. Fine control, coupled with a grasp of the battle situation, made it so that they wouldn't waste their Nianqi on unnecessary places. Li Onping was different. He didn't need to defend, and he could regenerate. He believed that his battle was to attack. Attack. Attack again. Destroy the opponent with a storm-like attack. All the Nianqi in his body was concentrated on Li Onping's right fist, and in the next moment, he swung it out like lightning. The huge force of the punch disturbed the air, and the wind formed by the punch swept out in all directions with Li Onping as the center. The grass on the lawn also fell in all directions around Li Onping, and then returned to its original position. However, the wind from the next punch would push them out again. It was like breathing in and out. Li Onping's right fist seemed to cause the entire lawn to breathe. Because he didn't need to defend and gathered all the Nianqi in his right hand, the power of this Nianqi was much stronger than that of ordinary level 1 ability users. After throwing out 500 punches with all his strength, although he was still full of energy, he had used up all his Nianqi. Li Onping exhaled and walked back into the house. After taking a shower, he lay down on the sofa in the living room. From today onwards, training alone, the speed of time, the speed of progress. If he wanted his abilities and body to improve rapidly and become stronger, the fastest way was to continuously absorb humans. Maybe it's time to start. Li Onping opened the web, intending to look at the news. In the Western continent, many incidents of cannibalism occurred in the west coast city of the MS Federation. In Xia's Blue City, construction of a 300-meter-tall true god statue started today. Many famous followers of the true god religion participated in the ceremony. True god religion. Did so many famous people participate? Li Onping casually glanced at the news and clicked on Tianjin City. Then he looked at the news. A few minutes later, his face gradually turned cold, and a faint shade of red had appeared in his eyes. Hey! At this moment, Xia Yinyan came down from the second floor and saw Li Onping lying on the sofa. She said, "It's not easy, training maniac. Why are you lying on the sofa today?" "I practiced in the morning. This afternoon, I plan to go online and check some information." Li Onping looked at Xia Yinyan and asked, "I ordered takeout. Do you want one?" "No need. You can keep it for yourself," Xia Yinyan said angrily. "I'm going out with my classmates." During this period of time, Xiao Laikong was very busy because of the protests from the diplomats of the Baiwa country. He hadn't come back for a few days. Li Qian was just getting familiar with the Xia Dragonfinch's work. She was basically not at home during the day, and because she had to work overtime at night, she came back very late. Therefore, during the day, only Li Onping and Xia Yinyan were in the villa. However, Xia Yinyan slept until 12 o'clock every day. She would only be seen in the afternoon and when Xia Yinyan came home at night. In a huge villa, Li Onping spent the longest time alone. Therefore, no one knew what the results of his practice were. After Xia Yinyan dressed up, she ran to the living room and looked at herself in the mirror. When she saw Li Onping staring at the tablet, she suddenly asked, "Hey, how do I dress up today?" Li Onping looked at her. The tulle dress, the nude pattern, and the black thighs were faintly visible. She didn't wear any stockings or pants, revealing a pair of slender, snow-white beautiful legs. Li Onping said casually, "It's okay. It's just too revealing." Xia Yunyan snorted coldly, old-fashioned. She was too lazy to pay attention to Li Onping. She picked up her handbag and walked a few steps towards the door. However, she suddenly turned back and asked, "You're not practicing today?" Li Onping looked at her unexpectedly and replied, "Well, from today onwards, I'll practice in the courtyard in the morning. I have other things to do in the rest of the time." Haha, you giving up? Xia Yunyan looked a little angry. She said, "You've been practicing for more than 10 hours every day for the past 2 weeks. Now you're giving up just like that?" Huh? Lianping looked at her strangely and replied, "I'm not giving up. I just don't need it anymore." Xia Yunyan didn't believe Li Onping's words at all. She had seen Li Onping practice so hard every day and had changed her opinion of him. She didn't expect that in just 2 weeks, he would give up in the end. Thinking of this, Xia Yunyan didn't know why she suddenly felt inexplicably angry. She angrily turned around, pushed the door open, and left. She left Li Onping with a strange expression. Li Onping guessed that Xia Yunyan used to practice very hard every day for a period of time. However, when she found that her ability was too weak and that it was useless no matter how high her level was, she gave up. From then on, she indulged in wine and women every day. No matter how Xia Laikong tried to persuade her, it was useless. Li Onping's status as a level 1 ability user and his diligent practice made her think of herself in the past. However, Li Onping didn't care how Xia Yunyan felt. After watching the news for half an hour, Li Onping picked up his phone and made a call. "Have you prepared the name list and information? Send it to my email." Li Onping picked up his tablet again and looked at a piece of news on it. "There's one more thing. Help me check it out." Then he began to look at information about fist techniques, blade techniques, swordsmanship, and other martial arts on the internet. A few days ago, Xia Laikong had promised to give him a copy of the Xia Dragonfinch's information in this area. He had also helped him get training room. However, Xia Laikong had been too busy these few days and hadn't even returned home. Li Onping hadn't had time to ask him about the results. When Li Onping was about to start his own operation, an argument about him was going on in one of the Xia Dragonfinch's offices. "Why did you cancel the meeting?" Xia Laikong stood up and slapped the desk. He stared at Song Bang behind the desk and said, "What happened to the meeting with Li Onping? In the training room I booked a few days ago. Why did you let the reserve members of Zhurong's team use it?" "You're talking about Li Onping?" Song Bang rubbed his eyes. His eyes showed that he didn't care. "It's very simple. I don't think it's worth it. The Xia Dragonfinch doesn't lack talent. Just a matter of Shang Onghua. I didn't let him report to prison directly because of you. Not to mention the matter of Fengqi and Jadeite City. You still want us to make a special trip to meet him? Let an outsider like him use our equipment? He has a lot of potential. I definitely approve of him." Song Bang raised his hand to stop Xia Laikong from continuing. "If he joins the Xia Dragonfinch and start from the bottom, I can consider meeting him. As for the training room, he can go there when he has the corresponding authority. When that time comes, I naturally can't stop him." "Are you targeting me?" Xiao Yekong's psychic energy rose. The air seemed to crackle with static electricity. "Song Bang, I know what you want. I have no interest in the royal family struggle. As long as it's good for the Xia, I will support it. Li Onping is one of the most promising geniuses I've seen in my life. I hope he can stand on the Xia Dragonfinch's side and not be forced to the enemy's side by some greedy people." Song Bang looked at Xia Laikong expressionlessly. It was as if he couldn't feel the pressure from the other party. "I have no interest in meeting him. If you insist on lending him the training room, then use the one in the suburbs. If I find out that someone brought a stranger to our base without my permission, I will kill him on the spot." After he finished speaking, he no longer paid any attention to Xia Laikong. He allowed the other party to leave in a huff. Half an hour later, a pitch-black figure emerged from the shadows of Song Bang's office. Song Bang seemed to be used to this figure. He said in a relaxed tone, "Tell the Baiwei country that I've found the person they want." The figure said, "Yes." After he finished speaking, the pitch-black figure immediately sank into the shadows and disappeared. Song Bang thought, the Great Eastern Continent's conflict is about to start. People like Xia Laikong, who wants to remain neutral forever, have no place in Xia's future. In comparison, if I can get the Fong family support and understanding, it will be more helpful for the current situation. However, if Tian can handle it, Xia Laikong might be able to support him. When the Fong family makes a move, it's not impossible for me to let Li Onping go. Thinking of this, Song Bang turned on his computer and began to work. Let's wait and see. Chapter 84. Under an office building in the suburbs of Xia, a large number of disheveled migrant workers stood at the entrance of the building. Some of them were holding flags in their hands, some had ribbons tied to their heads, some had injustice written on their clothes, and some were shouting slogans. There were about several hundred of them, blocking the front and back of the office building. Blood for blood, arrears of wages. The security guards in the building looked at each other and were on alert, fearing that these migrant workers would break in at any time. An experienced security guard looked very relaxed and casually comforted him. "Don't worry, they won't dare to mess around. Our boss has a powerful background. These workers can forget about getting their wages back. The police will come in a while and disperse them." A new security guard heard this and boldly asked, "I heard that some of them died, so they gathered here?" The old security guard denied. "You can't talk nonsense about this." But after a few seconds, he sneered and said, "But I heard that a group of thugs drove a container truck and rushed to our company's new land and caught a few of the leaders of the strike. Those workers are still missing." Hiss! The other security guards sucked in a breath of cold air. They were once again shocked by the ruthlessness of the big boss above them, even though they already knew some of the boss's deeds before coming to work. And their big boss was standing on the 18th floor of the office above them, looking at the migrant workers gathered at the entrance through the floor-to-ceiling glass. Huang Haitao, with his big belly, said with disdain, "A bunch of bumpkins. How dare you play rough with me?" He was the chairman of the Haitao group, Huang Haitao. People who were familiar with him knew that when he first came out more than 20 years ago, he started with a game engine room and gathered a group of brothers. Then, he took this group of brothers and targeted the demolition business, especially for those large real estate companies to drive away the stubborn residents and lower the relocation fees. He also did a lot of things like murder, arson, intimidation, and blackmail. But Huang Haitao was a man who knew how to adapt to the circumstances and didn't ask for a high price. His wife's family was also in the Urban Construction Bureau, so he had connections with the police. Plus, he also knew how to conduct himself, so he had never stopped paying all kinds of filial piety. Therefore, in the past 20 years, not only had he not been arrested, but he had also taken advantage of the soaring housing prices to expand his business. After establishing the Haitao Group, he had made a lot of money by exploiting the relocation fees and delaying the wages of the construction workers. However, he no longer cared about Lei Feng's affairs. His former subordinates were all handed over to his younger brother, Ahai. Huang Haitao raised this group of people to do his dirty work. Huang Haitao thought for a moment and asked the male secretary beside him, "Where's Ahai? How's he doing?" The secretary hurriedly replied, "Master Hai hasn't called back yet. He said that he wants to send him into the sea to help Master Tao regain your face." "This silly boy," Huang Haitao said, "he's really getting more and more arrogant. Fortunately, he's dealing with a bunch of bumpkins this time. If he really offended someone, even I would have to be a scapegoat. I'll teach him a lesson when he comes back. Call him later and tell him to teach him a lesson and let him go. Don't cause trouble for me." Halfway through Huang Haitao's speech, the office door was suddenly pushed open. A tall man walked in, and behind him stood a beautiful woman in a blue and white uniform. "Who are you? What are you doing? We'll let you in," the male secretary shouted. Li Yonping looked at Huang Haitao and scrupulously. When he passed by the male secretary, he could only see that the male secretary's hand seemed to shake slightly. A black shadow seemed to flash by, and the secretary hit the ground. Behind him, Li Qian closed the door of the office. Huang Haitao didn't panic in the face of danger. He calmly looked at the two and said, "What do you want?" At the same time, his hand slowly reached for the alarm under the table. Li Yonping didn't say anything. He directly grabbed the office table and threw it out. It crashed through the glass window of the building and smashed downstairs. There was a loud bang, and then countless people's voices came from downstairs. Li Yonping looked at Huang Haitao, whose legs were trembling nonstop, and said, "Pay back the salary you owe. And for the people who were squeezed by you in the past, transfer the money to their accounts according to the list within a month." Li Qian behind him came forward and stuffed a list of names, accounts, and the money they were owed into Huang Haitao's hands. Huang Haitao picked it up and looked at it, and said unwillingly, "I don't have so much liquid capital. You will drive me to death." "Drive you to death?" Lianping looked at Huang Haitao coldly, slowly walked to his side, and then squeezed his wrist and said, "You know what? I can let you sell your company, your car, your house, and your high-end antiques, jewelry, calligraphy, and paintings. Then, I'll give all the money to your employees and victims. Then I'll kill you." Huang Haitao felt that his wrist was almost broken. What was more frightening was Li Onping's threat, which made his back break out in cold sweat. "Do you understand?" With a crack, Huang Haitao's wrist was crushed. He was afraid that this hand would be crippled for the rest of his life. He screamed like a pig being slaughtered, and then he kept shouting, I understand, I will sell my property and transfer the money to them. Someone will check on you in a month. If you miss a cent, I will do it according to the plan." After that, he left with Li Qian without looking back, leaving Huang Haitao lying on the ground in pain. By the way, Lianping suddenly turned his head. "Where are your brother and the others?" I don't know." Huang Haitao saw him frown, and he was so scared that his face turned pale. He trembled and said, "But they will go back to their original place in a few days, 234 9th Avenue. Lianping nodded and left, satisfied. Half an hour later, the police arrived at the office building and drove away all the migrant workers. When they were about to enter Huang Haitao's office, they were all stopped and not allowed to enter. A few days later, the people who asked for their salaries found that there was an extra sum of money in their bank account, which was the same amount as the salary they did not get. Early in the morning, Li Onping was standing on the lawn, bare-chested, wearing only a pair of shorts. Every time he gathered his chi in his right hand, he would throw a straight punch with all his strength. The wind from the punch would spread in all directions, blowing Li Qian's hair into a mess. Li Qian held a newspaper and said, "According to the surveillance video on the highway, Ahai and the others will be back tonight. Huang Haitao has already paid back all his salary. As for the money he owes for so many years, he is still collecting it. It seems that he is selling his villas and most of his collections. That list is based on his limit. In this way, he will be a pauper after leaving the company." Lianping asked while practicing, "What about the others? Did they do what we told them to do?" Li Qian flipped through the newspaper and said, "Basically, they did it, but Lai Wenyong from the Golden Eagle Group and Yang Chong from the Bale Group did not transfer the money." Lianping thought for a moment and recalled. Lai Wenyong? The guy who swindled fund users' money, engaged in insider trading, falsified accounts, and swindled pensions? Yang Chong. Well, the guy who repaired the unfinished building, used oil barrels as load-bearing walls, collapsed Hope Primary School, and crushed 5 primary school students to death? I think he was also born a virgin, and he even killed his own wife. Yes, that's right. What happened to them? Did they escape or fight back? Lianping said lightly. Lai Wenyong booked a flight to Danyang City tomorrow morning. Yang Chong paid a group of people with a lot of powerful firearms to guard him every day. With Ahai's group, it seems that you will be busy tonight. Li Qian smiled. I hope there are a few ability users among them. After saying this, Li Onping didn't say anything else and closed his eyes. More and more psyche chi gathered on his right fist, and it became as deep as hell, like a black hole, crazily swallowing everything. Li Onping suddenly threw a punch, and a huge amount of chi, centered on his fist, exploded into the sky under his intentional control. The clouds above Li Onping's head tumbled. An ray of sunlight shone on Li Onping's body through the broken clouds. Li Onping, who was illuminated by the sunlight, looked like he was painted with a layer of golden paint, giving people a sense of tranquility and serenity. It was a sharp contrast with the violent punch just now. Li Qian quietly retreated with a look of admiration, leaving Li Onping alone on the grass to continue practicing. After finishing his morning practice, Li Onping sat on the sofa in the living room, browsing the web while holding the newspaper Li Qian gave him, processing the information on it. During this time, through Li Qian's ability, he had already monitored more than 3,000 rich businessmen, officials, ordinary employees, civil servants, cleaners, police, and other people in Tianjin. But it was far from enough. Not only did he want to eliminate evil, but he also wanted to become stronger through hunting, especially devouring ability users who committed crimes. Originally, the Xia Dragonfinch had a lot of ability users, but Li Onping didn't plan to go against the Xia Dragonfinch and hunt their ability users. This would cause all of the Xia and the 4 level 5 ability users, including Xia Laikong, to become enemies with him. So now he was only monitoring ordinary people to find traces of ability users who were involved in crimes. Just as he was thinking this, Li Onping heard the voices of a man and woman approaching. He put the newspaper back into his arms and concentrated on looking at the tablet in his hands. Xiaoyan brought Song Tian into the living room. Seeing Li Onping lying on the sofa and surfing the web, her sharp eyebrows wrinkled. "You don't have anything to do? Lying here all day?" Seeing that Li Onping didn't reply to her, still minding his own business and surfing the web, Xia Yinyun scolded in a low voice. "Mud can't support a wall." Then she smiled at Song Tian and said, "Wait for me here. I'll come down after changing." Song Tian nodded in agreement, watching Xia Yinyun go upstairs, and then sat down beside Li Onping. At this time, Song Tian looked at Li Onping with a faint trace of disgust. Recently, when he was dating with Xia Yinyun, he would often hear her mention Li Onping and praise Li Onping for being very hardworking. And the two seemed to be getting more and more familiar with each other. The biggest problem was that they actually lived in the same house every day. All of this made him feel a trace of a threat. He took out a check from his arms and handed it in front of Li Onping, saying expressionlessly, "Leave this mansion, pack up and leave tonight, and this check is yours. Tonight when I send Yinyun back, I don't want to see you again." After saying this, he didn't care if Li Onping answered, or if he thought that the other party wouldn't have a second answer. He just put the check on the sofa and then walked to the stairs to wait for Xia Yinyun. Until the two of them went out again, Song Tian didn't even look at Li Onping once, as if the Li Onping in front of him didn't even have the qualifications to be looked at. Chapter 85. Even after Song Tian and Xia Yinyun left, Li Onping did not pay any attention to them. Compared to these things that seemed to him like a child's jealousy, he still had proper business to attend to. Moreover, Song Tian and Xia Yinyun were close. Li Onping did not want to suddenly make a move just to save face and cause more trouble for himself. It might even affect his progress in becoming stronger. A few hours later, in the night, Li Onping moved forward at high speed in the shadows. Li Qian's voice came from the headset in his right ear. This was something that Li Qian had taken from the Xia Dragonfinch. "Hey, can you hear me? You can see a small courtyard 300 meters ahead. Yang Chong and his men are inside. I hear you. How's Ahai? Have they dealt with the aftermath? Have they found the people that they let go?" Li Onping took a step and flew over a wall. He took a few steps on the wall and reached the top of the building. He looked at the courtyard 300 meters ahead. They found them. None of the workers who led the strike died. They were just injured and will be fine after a few days in the hospital. However, the colleagues at the scene complained for a long time. "You were too cruel. There were 5 or 6 people whose heads were torn off. I heard that half of them vomited on the spot." "Ha ha." Li Qian's laughter came from the headset. Li Onping looked at the courtyard in the distance. He moved his feet and jumped off the roof. The wind blew past his ears. Kidnapping, intentional assault, rape, and detention. It's been so many years. They should have died long ago. Li Onping landed on another small building. With a light leap, he leaped over the buildings and rushed toward the courtyard in the distance. "How many of them are there?" Asked about the takeout they ordered. "There are 33 servings in total. We can't rule out that some of them ate 2 servings or didn't eat. The total number of people should be less than 40. Li Qian answered from the other end. "Got it." Hearing this, Li Onping leaped into the air and headed towards the courtyard. Bang! As soon as he landed, a strange sound came from under Li Onping's feet, followed by a series of explosions, awakening everyone in the courtyard. Li Onping looked at the large crater under his feet. His clothes and shoes had been blown apart, and his body was covered with wounds from the shrapnel. "There are landmines?" Are you kidding? This is Tianjing. Li Onping asked. Li Qian, can you still receive it? Is it broken? After asking a few questions, there was no response. Li Onping directly pulled out the earpiece in his ear and found that it was full of cracks. He threw the broken headset on the ground and saw a few people shooting at him in the distance. He revealed a bloodthirsty smile and rushed over. Li Onping didn't use much strength. He just ran a few steps and slid his fingers across their throats, chests, and heads. They had all fallen. But until the last person fell, not a single person let out a scream. In the eyes of the people who rushed over, after a series of afterimages, only Li Onping was left standing on the bloodstained lawn. The quality of this group of people was better than Li Onping imagined. When they saw Li Onping rushing over, none of them ran away or said a word. They all just shot in the direction of Li Onping, and they seemed to have experience in dealing with ability users. Although Li Onping's speed was so fast that they couldn't see him, they relied on exquisite cooperation to cover all the positions in front of them with bullets. Li Onping coldly snorted and rushed forward under the rain of bullets. He was hit by dozens of bullets before he reached them. Just as he twisted the head of one of them, the 5 people around him pulled out their grenades and rushed toward him. Aren't you afraid of death? Li Onping grinned maliciously. He kicked hard and jumped 50 meters up. He coldly looked at the 5 people below him who were staring at him blankly. Then 5 grenades exploded at the same time, killing the group of people. But at that moment, an armor-piercing bullet pierced through Li Onping's chest and exploded into a large cluster of sparks. Then Li Onping, who was in midair, fell to the ground. Then more than 10 men with submachine guns rushed up and looked at the corpse on the ground. But in the next moment, they all turned into countless pieces and flew out. The furious Li Onping directly used his fist to smash them all into pieces in a few seconds. Shaking off the blood on his hand, Li Onping looked at the small house in the middle of the courtyard. His ears twitched slightly, and he heard the sound of heartbeats and breathing. He said coldly, 18 dead, 15 left. His feet moved, and he dodged a volley of bullets as he rushed toward the small house. In the basement of the house, in addition to Yang Chong, there was also a thin and weak-looking young man seated on a chair with his eyes closed. A scarred man in camouflage uniform stood before him. Yang Chong paced back and forth in the basement, listening to the increasingly sporadic sounds of gunfire outside. Cold sweat trickled down his face. He suddenly turned around and walked toward the table. However, the scar man stopped him. What happened? Didn't you say that you would be able to capture him in just a few minutes? Why is it taking so long? The scarred man shouted, Watch your tone. We are not your subordinates. Sir Qiao is in the middle of casting a spell. You cannot disturb him. As the two of them were arguing, the gunfire coming from above suddenly stopped. The young man who had his eyes closed suddenly opened his eyes and stood up. When he saw Yang Chong and the scar man looking at him, he revealed a bitter smile. All the hosts that can be controlled are dead. He was hit by at least 1 landmine, 2 grenades, and hundreds of bullets. And yet, he is unharmed. What did you say? Yang Chong became agitated. You're the one who said that you can protect me. I gave you so much money. In the end, so many of you can't even defeat one person. Thinking back to the first time he met Li Onping, when Li Onping had casually crippled his subordinates and almost killed him, Yang Chong became even more terrified. The young man looked at the agitated Yang Chong and shook his head impatiently. Quiet. Seeing that Yang Chong was about to continue arguing, the scarred man went up and covered his mouth. The entire underground safe house is made of steel that is 3 feet thick. Even a rocket launcher would not be able to penetrate it. You just need to keep quiet and don't let him discover us. Seeing Yang Chong nod, the scarred man let him go. At that moment, knocking sounds suddenly came from above them. It sounded like someone was knocking on the door. The 3 of them stared with wide eyes at the steel ceiling and could not help but gulp. The young man pretended to be relaxed and laughed. It's okay. 3 feet thick sealed steel plates. You should not be able to hear the sound below. Yang Chong and the scarred man nodded subconsciously. But in the next moment, a loud sound exploded on the roof. It was as if someone had used a mallet to hit their hearts. Then, a series of loud sounds rang out. It was as if a giant was smashing the roof with a hammer. Boom, 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 boom. Loud sounds came one after another, mixed with the sound of the house collapsing and the sound of steel being twisted. The three of them were sweating profusely. Only the young man's face was pale. He forced a smile and said, "It's okay. 3 feet thick steel plates. Although he is very powerful, it is impossible for him to break them." "Yeah, how can a person break something like that?" Yang Chong laughed nervously. "He made such a big commotion. The police will definitely come soon. He can't kill me." Yeah, the scarred man said. Just as the three of them were comforting each other, the loud sounds suddenly stopped. Yang Chong laughed and said, "He gave up. He gave up." The young man and the scarred man also showed a smile of surviving a disaster. But this smile did not last for a second. Li Onping, who had finished gathering qi, also punched the ground. Then, an earth-shattering explosion sounded from above their heads. Rumble. As if someone had detonated a bomb, the whole basement began to shake violently. In the desperate eyes of the three, the steel wall above their heads made a screeching sound, and then a small fist-like bump was revealed. Then the second, the third. Finally, with a loud bang, Yang Chong fell to the ground and stared blankly at the big hole in the roof. Li Onping jumped down from the hole. The scar man pulled out his gun and pointed it at Li Onping. "You can't." Before his voice died away, his head flew off. When Yang Chong saw this, his lower body smelled like urine and he fainted on the ground. Li Onping looked at the young man and said, "You said lodging just now. Can you explain it to me?" The young man was much calmer than Yang Chong and the scarred man. He knew that his life was in Li Onping's hands. He replied clearly, "Like you, I'm also an ability user of the field system. My ability is to control humans as chess pieces. But I can only control ordinary people for now. No wonder those people up there were so unafraid of death just now. Moreover, they cooperated as if they were one person." The young man saw that Li Onping was deep in thought and said nervously, "I'm from the true God sect. Yang Chong is our believer. That's why we're here to protect him. If you have enough evidence to prove his sins, we can hand him over." The young man's words were neither soft nor hard. He pointed out his background and gave Li Onping a way out. Normally, among the ability users of Xia, very few would fall out with the true God sect. Seeing that Li Onping was silent, the young man was confident that Li Onping would not take the risk of becoming an enemy of the true God sect to kill him. At this moment, the sound of sirens suddenly rang out in the distance. The young man was just about to breathe a sigh of relief. But in the next moment, under his shocked gaze, Li Onping smashed his head with a punch. The long-lost feeling appeared again. Li Onping felt a large amount of energy being absorbed into his body. In addition to the gains he had made during this period of training, Li Onping's current physical fitness was 6, 2, speed 5, 0, and stamina 7, 0. With a flash, Li Onping had already left the scene, leaving the mess to Li Qian and the others. At 11 o'clock in the evening, Li Onping casually changed into a new set of clothes. When he returned to the villa and opened the door, Xia Yinyun and Song Tian were sitting on the sofa watching a movie together. Xia Yinyun's eyes were full of curiosity, while Song Tian's eyes were full of astonishment. But in the next moment, this astonishment turned into a violent emotion that filled his chest. Xia Yinyun looked at Li Onping in surprise and asked, "Why did you come back so late today?" Song Tian patted Xia Yinyun's shoulder and said, "Yinyun, can you pour us a glass of water?" "Oh." Xia Yinyun looked at Song Tian strangely, then got up and went to the kitchen. Li Onping acted as if he did not see Song Tian. He casually found a seat in the living room and sat down. Suddenly, Song Tian's voice rang out. "You have already accepted my money, right? Why are you still here now?" Li Onping looked at Song Tian and said, "You're talking about the one you left behind? I donated it to you." "Donated?" Song Tian stared at Li Onping, his psychokinesis full of malice gushing out. "You're playing with me? You donate so much money?" Song Tian stared coldly at Li Onping. Since the other party did not know how to appreciate his kindness, he was willing to be as polite as Xianchang. Song Tian planned to tell the other party a truth that would make him feel despair. I know you're an ability user and have some ability. You probably think you're very special, right? But I'm sorry to tell you that there are at least 8,000 level 1 ability users like you in the whole of the Xia, if not 10,000. There's even Yunyun and me. Both of our ability levels are higher than yours. Seeing the other party's stunned appearance, Song Tian pressed his psychokinesis towards Lianping. Seeing that the other party was unable to move under the pressure of his psychokinesis, Song Tian continued with a disdainful tone. Don't ever appear in front of Yunyun again. Otherwise, it won't be as simple as breaking an arm or a leg. At this moment, Xia Yunyun came to deliver the tea, but Song Tian just stood up and left. You're leaving just like that? You don't want to drink tea anymore? No, I still have something to do at the company tomorrow, so I'll go back first. After saying that, Song Tian looked coldly at Lianping and left without looking back. What the hell, what did he say to you? Xia Yunyun looked at Lianping strangely. I don't know, maybe he's crazy. Lianping turned on his computer and sent Li Qian an email. I want information on the true God religion and Song Tian. Chapter 86. Song Bang, huh? Lianping muttered to himself as he looked at the information Li Qian had sent him. Song Tian's background was deeper than he had imagined. First of all, his grandfather, Song Bang, was the current leader of the Xia Dragonfinch and was considered one of the strongest ability users in the Xia. The Song family itself was also one of the 9 royal families. His other uncles, brothers were all in important positions in the military and politics. And in next year's 9 royal families election, the Song family's support for ascending to the throne was also very high. It was said that their people had been running around recently, paving the way for next year's election. And Song Tian's pursuit of Xia Yunyun was clearly because he wanted to get in touch with someone as strong as Xia Laikong. After all, in this Xia Dragonfinch, apart from Zhu Rong, the Flying General, and Song Bang, there was only one level 5 ability user, Xia Laikong. And Zhu Rong was originally leaning towards Song Bang's side, while the Flying General and Xia Laikong were sworn friends. If Xia Yunyun became Song Bang's wife, then it would be beneficial for him to completely control the Xia Dragonfinch. After reading the information, Lianping understood that the Song family's power was so great that it was enough to make ordinary people tremble in fear. If other people knew that they had offended Song Tian with such a background, they might have been scared silly long ago, immediately apologizing and leaving the villa. But why would Lianping care about this? Moreover, the people he hated the most were the second generation of rich people and officials. Compared to directly reconciling, he was more inclined to directly get rid of Song Tian. If Song Tian really did something he shouldn't have done, then a few minutes later, Li Qian also arrived at the villa with a bag of documents, all of which were related to the true God religion. Song Bang was the leader of the Xia Dragonfinch, so Li Qian obviously couldn't get her information, so the documents sent to Lianping were all arranged by her. And the information on the true God religion was from the Xia Dragonfinch's internal archives. Obviously, the Xia Dragonfinch had been keeping an eye on the country's largest religious organization for a long time. The true God religion had existed in the East for over 1,000 years, and they were the largest ability user organization from ancient times until now. In ancient times, when technology wasn't yet flourished, superpowers were considered the power of gods or demons. Throughout history, there were countless religions that were formed by superpowers. Clearly, the true God religion was one of the most successful religions. He gathered believers through his ability, and then used the religion as a tool to gain wealth and power. This was the usual method used by most religions, but it was a tried and tested method. And the armed organization of the true God religion was called the Holy Alliance. When it was first established, it was responsible for the safety of the true God religion's personnel, property, and followers. And now, the true God religion didn't recognize the Holy Alliance on the surface, But in fact, they had been secretly supporting the Holy Alliance's illegal activities in Xia. The young man who could control the human body should be a member of the Holy Alliance. Similar civilian superpower organizations, such as the One Chi Sect and the Revival Society, all of them were due to various historical problems, which caused the Xia dragonfinch to be unable to incorporate, eliminate, or be unable to incorporate and eliminate them. Li Qian looked at Li Anping's serious look as he read the documents, and a trace of intoxication appeared in her eyes. When she saw Li Anping raise his head to look at her, she couldn't help but panic, and a trace of blush flashed across her face. Li Anping didn't care about this and directly asked, "Has your ability shown any signs of upgrading recently? How's the Xia dragonfinch doing?" "I don't understand upgrading at all." Li Qian shook her head. The Xia dragonfinch's treatment is good, the food in the cafeteria is good, and there's also a free gym, a swimming pool, an arcade, and the salary is high. Li Anping touched his forehead and stopped Li Qian from continuing. "I'm asking you about their attitude, towards you and towards me. Xia Laikong will be rushing to the northern front tomorrow morning, and without him in Tianjin, I'm afraid you'll be under a lot of pressure." "It's okay. My colleagues are all very good to me, and many people even said that you killed well. If they weren't in uniform, they would have done it long ago. But there are also some people who are dissatisfied with your violent behavior, and they have been complaining to their superiors about you. But Xia Laikong suppressed them. But their attitude towards you has nothing to do with me. A lot of people are still worried about me, afraid that you'll go berserk and kill me." Li Anping nodded and continued, "In terms of ability, I thought about it. Maybe it's not enough to just collect information. Can't you control paper? You should practice this ability every day. Maybe this is the key to why you haven't been able to upgrade." Then Li Anping and Li Qian discussed how to train their ability every day. Suddenly, his ears twitched, and he said, "Someone's coming. You should go first." Li Qian nodded and walked towards the back door. Before leaving, she couldn't help but look at Li Anping's back. She didn't know when, but Li Anping's back became more and more blurred. He was no longer as straightforward as before, and Li Qian was even a little unclear about Li Anping's ultimate goal. But this didn't hinder her trust in Li Anping. A trace of determination flashed in her eyes, and Li Qian left from the back door. A few minutes later, there was a knock on the villa's door. Li Anping opened the door and found a bright young man at the door. The young man looked to be about the age of high school, and when he saw Li Anping, he smiled. The young man stretched out his hand. "Hello, are you Li Anping?" Li Anping shook hands with the young man. "That's me, and you are?" "My name is Sun Hao. Boss Xia asked me to come." Sun Hao's smile was full of kindness. "I heard that you want to find a sturdy place to train." "Yes, he told me this morning that he arranged for 2 people to train with me after he left." "Where's the other person?" Sun Hao scratched his head embarrassedly, revealing the unique shyness of a young man. "Shindong has something to do. He can't come." Li Anping nodded and didn't say anything. He knew that things weren't that simple, but Xia Liekong's arrangement was to strengthen his relationship with this Xia dragonfinch, so Li Anping didn't care about it. "Then take me there directly." "Okay." After saying that, Sun Hao took Li Anping to the car he drove and drove directly to the training place. The car drove through the bustling center of Tianjin and headed toward the suburbs. The car drove farther and farther away, and Li Anping almost thought that the continuous mountainous area in front of him wasn't Tianjin. Sun Hao finally stopped in front of an open space. He smiled embarrassedly. "I'm sorry, all the other places have been taken, and this is the only place left." "It's okay, but where is it?" Sun Hao smiled mysteriously, got out of the car, and shouted a series of instructions toward the open space in front of him. Then, with a series of mechanical sounds, an underground entrance suddenly opened in the open space in front of Li Anping. Sun Hao turned his head and smiled. "Let's go, it's quite deep down, and the passage is very long." Li Anping followed behind Sun Hao, and along the way, they passed 3 inspection equipment, scanning their retinas, fingerprints, and Sun Hao's work pass. After walking for about a few hundred meters, their eyes lit up, and a vast underground space made of steel appeared in front of Li Anping. Sun Hao stood in front of Li Anping and introduced, "It's a total of 1,000 square meters in size, and it's wrapped in a radiation and impact-resistant layer. The entire training room is earthquake-resistant, pressure-resistant, heat-resistant, and cold-resistant. There's also a variety of cold and hot weapons for you to choose from. After saying that, rows of weapon cabinets rose up beside Sun Hao, from the simplest knives, swords, and daggers to pistols, submachine guns, and even rocket launchers and sniper rifles. Of course, in addition to the 1,000 square meters of open space for actual combat, there are many built-in training equipment for strength, speed, reaction, endurance, agility, and so on in the surrounding small rooms. I won't introduce them one by one, but there are instructions on the wall. There's a bathroom and toilet at the door, and the only downside is that there's no canteen. After saying that, Sun Hao smiled proudly and said, "How is it? Are you satisfied?" "Not bad." Xia Yunyun yawned as she walked down the stairs, looking sleepy. She subconsciously glanced at the living room. "TSK, where did you go to fool around again?" Xia Yunyun walked into the bathroom and started brushing her teeth. Halfway through, she suddenly walked toward the window in the courtyard. "TSK, I'm just taking a casual look, so you won't ruin my lawn." In the end, Xia Yunyun saw that the lawn was empty. Li Yonping was not there at all. Her face darkened, and she walked back to the bathroom to continue brushing her teeth. This country bumpkin, he's been going out early and coming back late these days. Where did he go to fool around? Xia Yunyun suddenly stopped brushing her teeth and thought to herself, did this guy join to Xia Dragonfinch and go on a mission? He's only level 1. Why is he doing a mission instead of training? No, he can't be fooling around with Ali Qian, right? That woman doesn't look like a good person. Suddenly, Xia Yunyun spat out the toothpaste in her mouth. Why am I thinking so much? He better disappear from my house quickly, then I can breathe a sigh of relief. Xia Yunyun continued to wash up, but for some reason, she couldn't help but think of Li Yonping, and then she couldn't help but get angry. In the underground training room, 2 shadows cut through the air, continuously clashing in the square. The impact of the 2 people's punches and kicks created waves of muffled sounds in the underground space. If someone were here to see Li Yonping and Sun Hao exchange blows, they would definitely be amazed by the 2's combat strength. Meanwhile, Sun Hao, who was in the middle of the battle, deeply felt the terror of Li Yonping in front of him. This Li Yonping, each of his punches and kicks look extremely fast and powerful, but that kind of relaxed expression shows that he isn't using his full strength at all. But I'm already almost at my limit. I'm still a level 4 ability user, after all. And those movements that seem like those of a layman, they look clumsy, but they're all meaningful. If he hasn't received special martial arts training to confuse the opponent, then it must be his instincts at work, the terrifying instincts of fighting for a living. There's no need to know why, no need to know the reason for each of his actions. He's fighting based on his instincts. This Li Yonping, just what kind of background does he have? Right at this moment, the 2 figures clashed again, and the muffled sound of the collision rang through the entire training room. Li Yonping stood steadily where he was. Meanwhile, Sun Hao directly flew out, rolling for over 10 meters on the ground before coming to a stop. Li Yonping asked, "Are you okay?" Sun Hao panted continuously, large amounts of sweat coming out from the surface of his body. He said intermittently, I'm fine." Chapter 87. Sun Hao was panting heavily. Compared to him, Li Yonping looked calm and relaxed, as if he had just finished taking a stroll. "Hey, I'll talk," Sun Hao said as he got up. "Just now, how much strength did you use?" "Me?" Li Yonping looked around the training room with interest, as if he was surprised by the hardness of the material under his feet. Hearing Sun Hao's question, he answered casually, "About 30 to 40%. Sun Hao stared at Li Yonping with wide eyes, unable to calm down for a long time. This was also one of Xia Liekong's goals. He knew that in a place like the Xia Dragonfinch, if an ability user wanted to be respected, it was best to directly display their strength. He also hoped that through this action, he could prepare Li Yonping to integrate into the Xia Dragonfinch. "My ability is to control the electricity in my body," and through stimulating my nerves and muscles, I have a godly speed that far surpasses ordinary people. This Li Anping, not only is his speed comparable to mine, his stamina and strength are far above mine. And he only used 30 to 40% of his strength? Are you kidding me? Where did Basya find such a monster? And he's only at the first level? It wasn't that Sun Hao hadn't seen geniuses with superior abilities, but it was the first time he had seen someone like Li Anping who was so terrifyingly strong at the first level. If he knew what Li Anping's ability was, he would probably understand that the level of an ability couldn't be used to measure Li Anping's strength. His combat strength was only related to his physical fitness. Li Anping saw that Sun Hao was still panting, so he said, "You rest first, I'll try something else." Then, Sun Hao saw Li Anping go to a dodgeball training room. He even adjusted the difficulty of the game. 21 marbles were ejected from the room. The huge kinetic energy caused the marbles to bounce around the small room. What Li Anping needed to do was to dodge all the marbles before they stopped. Only a series of afterimages could be seen flickering in the small room. From the beginning to the end, Li Anping did not let the ball touch his body even once. This wasn't just a matter of speed, but also a comprehensive performance of reaction, insight, and concentration. Even Sun Hao himself could only score 9 goals. After Li Anping finished his training, he quickly walked to the next machine. This monster, I'm convinced. Sun Hao shook his head and walked towards Li Anping. He took out a USB drive and said, "This is the internal information that Boss Xia asked me to pass to you. It's all military combat techniques that we've simplified or improved, especially suitable for ability users with powerful physical bodies. Originally, I wasn't too convinced. Now take it. I also want to know how strong you will become after practicing these things." "Thanks." Taking the USB drive, Li Anping revealed a smile. At night in an alley, a provocative girl with blonde hair in a revealing dress was running along the corner of the wall. Her long and slender thighs, together with her soft breasts and thin waist, looked extremely sexy. She ran quickly barefoot, her chest moving up and down. Her eyes would look behind her from time to time. There was still a terrified expression on her face, as if something terrifying was chasing after her. Just as he was running halfway, 2 youths suddenly blocked his path. "Miss, it's very dangerous to be out so late at night. Do you want to go out and play with us?" Seeing the 2 men's lecherous looks, the woman looked at them with disgust and shouted, "Scram!" Something unbelievable happened. The woman's voice seemed to have magic, rolling up an invisible force, pushing the 2 men away and making them roll out. Looking disdainfully at the 2 men who were lying on the ground and crying out in pain, the woman continued to run out. But just as she turned a corner, a brick flew toward her at high speed. The woman screamed subconsciously. This scream smashed the brick flying toward her into smithereens. Li Anping slowly walked out from the shadows. He looked coldly at the blonde woman and said, "Turning sound into physical force? That's a good ability. It's a pity you didn't use it in the right place." Seeing Li Anping walk out, the woman's expression changed drastically. She turned around without looking back and ran toward another alley. The woman's explosive speed at this moment was comparable to the world's top sprinters. Moreover, she ran for more than 500 meters without panting. While running, the woman looked back and realized that Li Anping was no longer in sight. She stopped. She looked around nervously. The street lamps on the side were flickering. Under the dim yellow light, the surrounding alley seemed to be darker. Other than a few catcalls, there was no one in sight. "You're looking for me?" A voice suddenly rang out behind the woman's head, scaring her so much that she fell to the ground. She kept screaming at Li Anping, who had suddenly appeared. The sound waves turned into an invisible force that kept pressing toward Li Anping. However, other than disturbing his clothes, it was useless. It seemed that this power was like a gentle breeze to Li Anping. Seeing that her ability was ineffective, the woman gradually regained her composure. She looked at Li Anping and said, "Who are you? Why are you dealing with me?" Li Anping didn't say anything. He just walked up to her and looked at her silently. The woman felt her hair stand on end. She said in a panic, "You've already killed all my subordinates. Isn't that enough? No matter who pays you to kill me, I can pay double the price. I'm not doing this for money. Li Onping took out a photo and placed it in front of the woman. Do you still remember her? The woman looked at the photo. It was a little girl about 10 years old. She looked pure and cute, and her clothes were innocent. However, the photo looked a little old. It seemed to be an old photo from many years ago. The woman faintly felt that the little girl looked a little familiar, but she couldn't remember where she had seen her before. You want to find this girl? I can use my power to help you find her, she said. Li Onping shook his head. There was a touch of red in his eyes. This is the first girl you kidnapped 10 years ago. Her name was Hong Mengli. She died of AIDS 3 years ago. During the 7 years she was in your hands, you treated her as a sex slave, a bargaining chip to please the rich and powerful. Even now, her parents still haven't given up looking for her. Unfortunately, they will never find her. The woman said in a panic, You're his relative? What do you want? I can give you all my money. Seeing Li Onping's unmoved expression, the woman licked her lips. Suddenly, she took off her little dress, revealing her fierce mask. She looked seductive. Do you want me? She slowly peeled off her fierce mask, revealing her snow-white and tender chest. With the support of Qi and the millions of dollars spent on maintenance every year, her 30-year-old body was still as tight as a young girl's. However, with the young woman's familiarity with sex, she looked even more erotic. She stroked her chest and grabbed the 2 small spots on her chest. She let out a soft gasp and blushed. I'm very good at serving people. As long as you let me go this time, I can be your woman. No, I can be your slave. I'll make you feel so good that you can fly. After that, she boldly grabbed Li Onping's crotch. However, Li Onping slapped her hand away. In the past 10 years, you've used your ability to abduct and sell more than 30 young girls for sex. Li Onping looked at the woman coldly. He was completely unaffected by her naked body. It was as if the person in front of him was a statue and not a living beauty. I'm here today to kill you. That's all. When Li Onping pointed at the woman's forehead, her eyes were still filled with shock. A few seconds later, her pupils gradually dilated and her body fell to the ground. Feeling a trace of power flowing into his body through his finger, Li Onping said into the earpiece, I've found them. Let them deal with the aftermath. Li Onping flashed and appeared 100 meters away. The sound of the wind whistling through the earpiece could be heard. Li Qian said on the other end, Understood. We've already taken all the girls away. There will be people to take care of them. After they finish their psychological treatment, their parents will come and take them away. And the money in her account. Donate it all. Li Onping said casually. Li Qian thought for a moment and said, I've kept a portion. A cold snort made Li Qian tremble uncontrollably. However, she still held her breath and said, Also, after the last few arrests, I've kept a portion of the criminals' funds. I think you need this money. I don't need money. Li Onping's cold voice made Li Qian's heart palpitate. Li Qian, don't do anything unnecessary. But I think you need it. Li Qian argued. You're not alone. I don't know if you'll become enemies with the Xia Dragonfinch in the end, but I don't think you'll join the Xia Dragonfinch, right? Whether or not you'll become enemies with the Xia Dragonfinch, a hidden fund is very useful. In this society, food, shelter, and transportation, everything needs money. Don't even talk about being chivalrous. If you have companions in the future, or buy weapons, venues, or even some of your personal matters, you can't just rely on the Xia Dragonfinch, right? Also, if you want to help the weak and kind, money is also very important. After that, Li Qian closed her mouth and stopped talking. Although she didn't say it explicitly, she was leaving a way out for Li Onping. However, she was really afraid that Li Onping wouldn't trust her anymore. There was a long silence. Li Qian even thought that Li Onping had turned off his headset. Only then did he reply. This is the only time I'll pretend that nothing happened. In the future, if you want to do something similar, you have to tell me in advance. Phew. Li Qian exhaled and continued. I've also done some research and found someone. I think we can get him to join us and help us with the funds. Do you want to meet him? I'll leave it to you, but you have to use your ability to monitor him. I need to know the whereabouts of every single cent every day. Chapter 88. In Song Bang's office, a middle-aged man who looked simple and honest and old-fashioned was sitting in front of Song Bang's desk with a cautious expression. The man looked honest, but there was a cunning look in his eyes. Shandong, why are you looking for me? Song Bang looked at the computer screen in front of him without looking at Shandong. Shandong smiled and said, I don't want to work for Boss Xia anymore. I want to work for you. What nonsense, Song Bang frowned and said. What's there to work for? We're all working for the Xia. Yes, for the Xia. Shandong nodded and said, I want to change my position. I don't want to work for old Xia anymore. Song Bang looked at Shandong and said, Why? You were promoted step by Xia Laikong, weren't you? If it weren't for him, you wouldn't be standing in front of me now. Hee. Shandong's smile looked very simple and honest, but the words that came out of his mouth were very vicious. What's that old saying again? A fine bird chooses a tree to nest in. Old Xia treated me well in the past, but I've worked for him for so many years and helped him so much. I've repaid what I owed him. Now, he's promoting a newbie who hasn't even joined the team. How can I swallow this anger? You've heard the rumors in the team recently, haven't you? In order to win over a kid who's still wet behind the ears, he made a bunch of people clean up his mess. It was Shirley's fault for doing this. Also, he wants me and Sun how to accompany that kid in training. I've been in the team for more than 10 years. I've worked hard for him. He's promoting a newbie now, and he wants us to be his stepping stones. It's not that easy. Song Bang stared at him for a while and said, Okay, you can go. What about this? Shandong scratched his head. I'll arrange a position for you in a few days. Thank you, Prince. Shandong happily stood up and hurriedly left. After Shandong left, Song Bang opened a document on his computer. It was all about Shandong's social activities in recent years. Most of them were evidence of him colluding with some rich businessmen and officials. A few of them, in particular, had lost a lot of money because of Li Onping's killing over the past few days. For example, he had invested in several plots of land built by the Haitao Group. Obviously, Li Onping's actions had violated his interests. In addition, in recent years, he had been surpassed by newcomers like Sun Hao and was gradually pushed out of Xia Liekong's circle of masters. Therefore, he was dissatisfied and wanted to seek refuge with Xia Liekong's political rival, Song Bang. However, Song Bang didn't care about why he sought refuge with him, nor did he care about how many heinous things he had done. In fact, under him, Song Bang would even give him more benefits and freedom. Because of Shandong's own strength and the representative of those who sought refuge with him, Song Bang was concerned. If there was a first, there would always be a second and a third. In the following days, Li Onping went to the training room with Sun Hao almost every other day to train. In addition, he constantly hunted ordinary people and ability users who did evil at night. His strength rose steadily. Currently, his physical fitness had reached 6. 3 in strength, 5. 2 in agility, and 7. 1 in stamina. Li Onping's fighting skills had improved even more. They had completely removed the original rough and immature parts, becoming more mature, effective, and straightforward. In addition, there was some internal information from the Xia Dragonfinch. The current Li Onping was at least twice as strong as when he first came to Tianjing. Boom! The two fists collided. Sun Hao felt a wave of power pass through his arm and shoulder and hit his entire body. His body flew uncontrollably toward the ceiling. Li Onping, who was below him, formed a palm with his right hand and made a strange gesture. Then, he struck upward towards Sun Hao's position with his palm. Boom! It sounded like something hitting the surface of the water. In Sun Hao's eyes, a white shockwave came toward him and blasted directly on his body. The huge force passed from his skin to his muscles, internal organs, bones, and nerves. His body was in a state of immobility in midair, and then he fell straight to the ground. The Xia's military martial art technique, empty palm. Through special techniques, coupled with great speed and strength, the palm compressed the air to form a shockwave. Sun Hao also knew this move, but the shockwave he sent out was at most 1 meter away. It was enough to knock out ordinary people. It had very little effect on ability users with strong physical fitness. In Li Anping's hands, this martial art technique was like adding wings to a tiger. According to Sun Hao's estimation, Li Anping's empty palm had a range of about 5 meters. It was also very powerful. Li Anping had used the empty palm to hit Sun Hao from a distance several times. It even scattered the muscle strength in his body, making him unable to use his strength for a few seconds. How long has it been since I gave him the martial art technique materials? It hasn't even been a week, right? I can't believe he's already so proficient in using the empty palm technique. Sun Hao's astonishment had almost dissipated during his training with Li Anping. At first, he had the confidence and ambition to catch up with Li Anping. In fact, during this period of training with Li Anping, he had made great progress and was much stronger than before. But Li Anping's progress was even greater. Superb memory, comprehension, and imitation skills. And what Sun Hao didn't know was that terrifying body that was constantly getting stronger. Sun Hao was becoming less and less confident that he could catch up with Li Anping's footsteps. Seeing Sun Hao fall to the ground and not get up for a long time, Li Anping asked, "What's wrong? Are you tired today?" "No, I'm thinking about how to beat you." After all, Sun Hao was a young and energetic teenager. Moreover, since he became an ability user, he had always been regarded as a genius. Although he admired Li Anping's strength more and more in his heart, he refused to admit defeat. "Let me think about it. I'm almost there." It was said that no discord, no friendship. Li Anping and Sun Hao fought every few days, so they could be considered friends. He thought for a while and said, "Is your ability to control electricity?" "How did you know?" Sun Hao looked at Li Anping in surprise. "That's right. I've electrocuted you a few times, trying to numb you. But in the end, nothing happened to you. My ability is to control bioelectricity. Although I can charge it with electricity, the power of the electrocution isn't strong. Its main function is to stimulate my cells and nerves, increasing my body's speed. It also replaces nerve signals, saving the brain time to react. It makes me faster." "Then have you thought about magnetism?" Li Anping said after thinking for a while. "Magnetism? Didn't they say that electromagnetism doesn't separate? Since you have electricity, why don't you try magnetism?" "How did you think of magnetism?" Sun Hao looked at his hands. It was impossible that he hadn't thought of magnetism. After all, he had had this ability for more than 10 years. Electromagnetism is one of the 4 fundamental forces. I think if you can use it, it should be very powerful. Sun Hao looked at his hands and felt the surge of electricity under the surface of his body. He didn't speak for a long time. Li Anping saw that he was deep in thought, so he didn't wait for him there. He went directly into a room next to him. There was a 100-meter-long track inside. Along the way, there would be steel pillars that would protrude from all directions. The trainers would have to run the 100 meters quickly while avoiding the steel pillars. This training was focused on the ability to charge and assault. The afternoon passed just like that. When Li Anping came out of the shower and sat in Sun Hao's car, the phone rang. Li Qian's voice came from the phone. "Finished training? Do you remember what I told you last week? I have my eyes on someone who can help us with the funds. I've arranged to meet him today. You should come too." Li Anping said perfunctorily. "I said that I'll leave everything to you, right? Just make sure that the money isn't misspent and show me his newspaper. Also, I have an action tonight. Did you forget that all your actions will be taken care of by us? Today is your day off." Li Qian suddenly said coquettishly, "And we haven't seen each other for almost a week. This time, I'll take it as a chance to see you." Li Anping really couldn't stand the girl's coquettishness. He could only helplessly say, "You only have 15 minutes. Give me the address. Sun Hao will send me there." "Hey, when did I say I'll send you there?" Ignoring Sun Hao's complaints, Li Anping listened to the address and said to Sun Hao, "The intersection of 5th and 6th Avenues. I'll get off there." Chapter 89. Wei Zhuan sat in the coffee shop, looking a little bored. This was the third time the waitress had refilled his cup. Every time she bent down, Wei Zhuan could clearly see the color of her underwear, as well as her deep cleavage. Wei Zhuan understood what this girl's goal was. Be it the watch on his wrist that was worth over 100,000 yuan, the handmade suit, or the limited edition leather shoes on his feet, they were all fatally attractive to young girls who had a youthful and beautiful face but came from ordinary family backgrounds and desired wealth. If it were any other time, Wei Zhuan wouldn't mind having sex with this sweet-looking girl with a curvy figure. He would also be able to relieve her financial pressure. However, he wasn't free right now. He was here to work today. A mysterious client had contacted him through email and asked him to come here. According to the rules of the industry, he wouldn't have agreed to a stranger's appointment. However, when the other party sent the email, he had also transferred 1 million yuan to his personal account. Regardless of whether it was this 1 million yuan or the fact that the other party had easily found out about his overseas account, they all revealed that the other party was not ordinary. Therefore, Wei Zhuan came to the intersection of 5th and 6th Avenues today to have a cup of coffee. Hello, you're Wei Zhuan, right? A man sat down in front of Wei Zhuan. Tall, strong, and cold. This was Wei Zhuan's first impression of him. However, the other party's second sentence made his expression change. Or can I call you Huang Tian? Which do you prefer? Wei Zhuan, or rather, Huang Tian's back was already soaked in cold sweat. I'm sorry, you seem to have found the wrong person. After saying that, he stood up and looked around, searching for possible police officers, special agents, or Interpol. Don't be nervous, Huang Tian. If I were you, I'd sit down. Li Anping, who was sitting opposite Huang Tian, smiled and said, if I really wanted to catch you, it would be at 420 Tina Road, 650 Starry Sky Road, or maybe 122 Tianyuan Road, although you don't go there very often. Hearing the other party reveal 3 of his hiding places in Tianjin, Huang Tian had no choice but to sit down and continue to talk with Li Anping. What do you want? What I want is your talent. Li Anping recalled the information that Li Qian had given him and said, 10 years ago, on the surface, you were the treasurer of the De Xia royal family's charity organization. However, I heard that you were wanted for corruption and dereliction of duty. In the end, the police let you escape. Whatever you say. Li Anping shook his head. I know you were wronged. In fact, 10 years ago, there were more than 1 or 2 people who embezzled public funds and just waited to die. However, on the surface, there were still a few people who insisted on doing charity. Because of this, you became a thorn in everyone's side. When the corruption scandal broke out in the organization, you became the first choice of scapegoat. Huang Tian stared at Li Anping. Who exactly are you? Li Anping ignored him and continued. From a wanted criminal to a billionaire again, you only used 7 years. Moreover, you didn't go from one extreme to the other. You still do charity. The amount of money you donate every year is probably more than the amount of money that those celebrities who scam donations in the news put together. Speaking of which, it's not surprising. A person with ability wouldn't do too badly no matter what. What did you say? I don't understand what you mean. Your ability should be related to mathematics, right? Although it can't be used to fight, in modern society, it's easy to use it to make money. Huang Tian didn't say anything, but he was shocked by the other party's ability to gather information. Intelligence Bureau? Military Intelligence Bureau? Special Warfare Bureau? A few names flashed through Huang Tian's mind, but he couldn't match any of them. It's a pity. Although you earn money that others can't earn in their lifetime, there are some things that you will never be able to undo. As if realizing what the other party was going to say, Huang Tian's breathing quickened. Li Anping handed Huang Tian a phone. This is your enemy, the mastermind who framed you, Miao He and his goddaughter, Song Xiao. Haha, if his goddaughter didn't love to flaunt her wealth, so many dirty secrets wouldn't have been exposed. He wouldn't have jumped up and down and tried to use you as a scapegoat. What's funny is that she used this incident to hype herself up and became a small celebrity. Huang Tian looked at the video on the phone nervously. It was a video of Miao He and Song Xiao being gagged and tied together. Now, you can take revenge on them at any time. This is something that you can never do with money alone. What are your conditions? Huang Tian looked at Li Anping calmly, but his trembling hands couldn't stop. I have a fund. I don't want people to ever find out about him, but I can use it at any time. With your ability and talent, I believe you could do it. Li Anping gave him a bank card with a password written on it. Okay. Huang Tian nodded. There's 200 million in it now. In the future, I'll add money to it from time to time. What you need to do is keep it safe for me and give 20% of it to charity. Huang Tian was puzzled. Aren't you afraid that I'll run away with your money? I'm not afraid. Li Anping said, you should already know about our intelligence network, and you're not the only metahuman in this world. Li Anping raised his hand, and a drop of blood slowly fell from it. At this moment, Huang Tian felt a chill on his forehead. He didn't know when it had happened, but there was already a cut on his forehead. Then Li Anping's voice came from behind his head. If you do something you shouldn't do, it won't be as simple as a small cut next time. Huang Tian looked up again, but Li Anping was nowhere to be seen. He looked around and saw that no one was paying attention to him. It was as if they didn't see what Li Anping had done. He didn't know that Li Anping's speed had already surpassed the limit of what a normal person could see with their eyes. These normal people were no different from blind people to Li Anping. A minute later, Huang Tian received a message on his phone. It was Miao He and Song Xiaoxiao's current location. Li Anping got into the car and saw Li Qian staring at her phone. He asked, "What are you looking at? The northern front doesn't look good. Fire Dragon Vanguard, White Short Star, and Lei Di ambushed the flying general and injured him. When General Xia arrived, it was already a little late. The originally evenly matched situation was broken. After Li Qian finished speaking, she comforted herself. But she'll be fine. General Xia is very strong, right? Zhurong, who has the same status as him, shouldn't be weak either. Fire Dragon Vanguard only sent White Short Star and Lady, so it shouldn't be a problem if it's 2 against 2. Forget it. Let's not talk about this. Let's go eat." Li Qian turned her head and stared at Li Anping. Li Anping wanted to reject, but Li Qian didn't let go of his arm and kept shaking it. After all, Li Qian was one of them. Li Anping couldn't be as cruel to her as he was to his enemies. This was one of the results of him still holding on to human habits. In the end, Li Anping didn't train, read, or go online that night. Instead, he went shopping with Li Qian, had dinner, and watched a movie. When the two of them returned to the villa, Li Qian asked with a red face, "Is this considered a date?" Without waiting for Li Anping's reply, she skipped away on her own. Then, Xia Yunyan walked down the stairs in her pajamas. She looked at him with an unfriendly expression. "You haven't been training your qi recently. Why are you fooling around with this woman every day?" When Li Anping saw Xia Yunyan, he was surprised and said, "You're back early today." "I just woke up." "Don't change the topic. Have you been with her every day for the past few days?" Li Anping didn't bother with her and went straight to his room. Xia Yunyan was left standing alone in the living room. She didn't know why she was angry. In the following days, Li Anping wandered between darkness and light. He trained, caught criminals, went online, read newspapers, and went for a drive. He used Li Qian's ability to monitor the situation every day. Speaking of which, although Li Qian's ability hadn't improved, there were about 10,000 people in Tianjing being monitored. Because her ability would end after 30 days, Li Qian had to use group voice calls to achieve continuous monitoring. Xia Yunyan seemed to have completely given up on Li Anping. She thought that he was useless and had given up on practicing qi. Although Xia Likong didn't support her and Song Tian being together, her relationship with Song Tian seemed to be warming up. In the training room, after Sun Hao left, Li Anping slowly pulled out the high-frequency knife he brought with him from the scabbard. He used a little force in his palm, and a thin layer of red light appeared on the blade. Li Anping pointed the tip of the knife at the alloy dummy in front of him and suddenly stabbed it. It was as easy as inserting a table knife into a pot of hot butter. After the Murasima blade pierced into the dummy's body, Li Anping then lifted the blade up, slicing the dummy into 2. During this period of time, other than his punches and kicks, Li Anping didn't forget about the high-frequency knife. It was just that he treated the high-frequency knife as his secret weapon. With his strength and speed, when he wielded the Murasima blade that could slash through anything, his destructive prowess had increased by more than 10 times. Chapter 90. When Sun Hao returned to the door of the training room, he could hear the howling of the strong wind from far away. He walked up to the door and looked toward the source of the sound. He saw a black shadow shuttling back and forth between over 100 dummies at high speed. Streams of red sword light surged in the air. Because the human and sword shadows were moving too fast, they seemed to be connected together. They were like streams of laser beams, slicing the dummies into countless pieces. Then, they were blown up into the air by the howling strong wind. Within a few seconds, the 100 dummies were sliced into pieces by the laser-like red sword light and swept up into the air. As the sword light flashed, Sun Hao could feel its terrifying sharpness from far away. It even shone on his face and caused him to feel a slight stinging pain. Sun Hao knew that it was an illusion caused by the sword being too sharp and the air being stirred up. However, he still could not help but take a few steps back. The human figure who was stirring up the sword light had already stopped. It was Li Onping. He held the sword with one hand and looked at the pieces that were floating in the air and were about to fall down slowly. Just when Sun Hao thought that it was over and was astonished by his opponent's sword skills, Li Onping's other hand was also holding onto the hilt of his sword. A huge sense of threat came rushing toward him. To Li Onping, it was just the aura that was unleashed from serious sword practice. However, to Sun Hao, it was a terrifying pressure that was enough to threaten his life. His muscles tensed up subconsciously, and he focused like never before. The bioelectric current instantly took over the control of his body, manipulating his body to move backward according to the predetermined procedure. Under the pressure of a threat that he had never felt before, Sun Hao's concentration and insight reached their limits in an instant. Therefore, in that instant, he also clearly saw Li Onping's movements. Sun Hao felt that the entire training room space seemed to have slowed down. In his eyes, the pieces in the air were falling at an extremely slow speed. Li Onping's other hand slowly touched the hilt of his sword, forming a two-handed sword grip. This kind of slow illusion meant that Li Onping's movements had already reached a limit. In Sun Hao's eyes, Li Onping slowly swung his sword towards the fragments in the air. The supersonic slash, coupled with the sharp cutting surface of the high-frequency knife, formed a sharp shock wave visible to the naked eye. A shock wave like this could be as simple as a gust of wind. However, before the first shock wave dissipated, a second shock wave appeared, followed by a third and a fourth. In Sun Hao's line of sight, the 1-meter radius in front of Li Onping had already become a blurry red shadow. With a speed that exceeded Sun Hao's imagination, his hands slashed at the air again and again. The atmosphere was screaming. Space was trembling. Countless streams of air turned into shock waves, stacking together like a storm of swords. In the next moment, Sun Hao's senses returned to normal. At this moment, he took a small step back. The training room in front of him had already become a vast expanse of white. The white shock waves, or rather sword cheese, weasel sickles, etc., rose up like countless tornadoes, engulfing all the fragments in the air. A terrifying friction sound rang out, as if a monster was swallowing the air. A few seconds later, all the fragments in the air disappeared, and Li Onping still maintained his two-handed sword grip. It was as if his previous movements were just an illusion. Everything happened in a short period of less than a second. If an ordinary person were here, they would only see Li Onping holding the sword with both hands, and then a white sword glow sweeping past, turning the fragments in the air into fine powder. If it were 100 or 200 years earlier, Li Onping would have been regarded as a sword immortal, a sword cultivator. This sword technique was modified from the empty palm into Xia Dragonfinch's information. Li Onping named its sword cheese waves. After Li Onping sheathed the high-frequency sword, he turned and silently looked in Sun Hao's direction. Fang Xingjian's heartbeat and breathing were so loud. How could he not have noticed it? Sun Hao walked out from behind the door and looked at Li Onping slowly. Ha! I came back because there's something I forgot to tell you. There's a small gathering tomorrow. Come along. Li Onping looked at Sun Hao coldly. It was only when he saw that the latter's hair stood on end that he said calmly, "Don't talk nonsense." "Don't worry, I definitely won't tell anyone," Sun Hao said anxiously. "I'm a famous zipper, the terminator of secrets, and the crusher of gossip. Other than me, there won't be a second person who knows about today's matter." After saying so much, Sun Hao said with some anticipation, "You'll be attending tomorrow's gathering, right? You've been training every day, so you should take a break. Anyway, without your work pass, I won't be able to enter the training room." Li Onping paused for a moment and then said, "Just come and pick me up tomorrow." All right. Sun Hao nodded excitedly. "I'll come and pick you up at 10 in the morning tomorrow." At 10 in the morning the next day, Li Onping sat in Sun Hao's car and headed to the gathering location. The location was in a forest park. The people there were all members of the Xia Dragonfinch, eating barbecue together. They were basically all ability users. As the forest park was very big and there were not many people, they could casually pick a corner to chat or play. There was not much pressure. When Li Onping and Sun Hao arrived, they could already see over 10 men and women sitting in a circle. Among them, there were two people who attracted the most attention. One of them was an honest-looking middle-aged man, and the other was a young man who looked like a rich man. The reason why these two people attracted the most attention was because Li Onping noticed that every movement of the people around them, whether intentionally or not, was centered around these two people. Sun Hao whispered in Li Onping's ear, "The one who looks like a farmer is called Shindong. He could be considered one of the old people here. The one who looks very rich is called Qian Duo. He's even stronger than me. We can all be considered part of Boss Xia's faction." There are also many people who followed Boss Xia to the north. They didn't stay in Tianjing. Li Onping nodded and walked toward the crowd. Sun Hao greeted a few acquaintances. With his strength, he was obviously quite popular in the Xia Dragonfinch. As he greeted the people, he introduced Li Onping. "This is Li Onping. He's someone that Boss Xia values. He's very powerful." Everyone just nodded at Li Onping and didn't pay too much attention to him. It was as if there was an invisible wall between Li Onping and them. Shindong glanced at Li Onping indifferently and said, "You're Li Onping, right? I'm Shindong. I could be considered your senior. I heard that you've been letting our people clean up your mess recently." Feeling that Shindong seemed to have some inexplicable hostility, Li Onping casually replied, "If you're talking about cleaning up the aftermath of my murder, then that should be the case." "Ha ha ha. Then you really have a lot of face. Does Xia Laikong treat you like his own son?" Shindong laughed a few times. Suddenly, his face turned cold, and the surrounding air seemed to have become cold. Several colleagues on the side seemed to have felt Shindong's abnormality. They kept looking at Li Onping and Shindong. To be honest, although they hadn't seen Li Onping, they knew what Xia Laikong had done for Li Onping and what Li Onping had done recently in Tianjing. There were even a few of them who were responsible for dealing with Li Onping's aftermath. Their attitude toward Li Onping was naturally different. Some hated Shindong, and some admired him like Sun Hao. Of course, there were also those who didn't care and didn't care. For example, when everyone's eyes were on Shindong and Li Onping, Qian Duo didn't even raise his head. He just stared at the food on the table, and no one knew what he was thinking. In his eyes, whether it was Shindong or Li Onping, they were just small waves in the ocean. It might cause a stir, but it wasn't enough to change the tide. Shindong saw that everyone's eyes were on him. So he said, "Why aren't you answering? I heard that you've been using our training room recently. You haven't joined a Xia Dragonfinch yet, right? You want to use our room, spend our money, and even have us clean up your mess. Old Xia really thinks of himself as your nanny." Li Onping was too lazy to care about Shindong. His doubts were reasonable, but he didn't have the obligation to explain for him. Sun Hao stood up and said, "I think Li Onping deserves this respect. I've been training with him recently, and I can only say that Boss Xia didn't make a mistake." Shindong stared at Sun Hao. "How's he? What does this have to do with you? You think he's qualified just because you say so? You think you're the best here?" I worked so hard for so many years to get to where I am now, unlike some people. After he finished speaking, he coldly glanced at Li Anping. Other than Sun Hao, who stood on Li Anping's side, Shindong's colleagues all looked at Li Anping with scrutinizing eyes. Sun Hao retorted a few more times, but he was stopped by Shindong, who took advantage of his seniority. At this moment, Qian Duo, who had been in a daze, looked helplessly at Sun Hao. This guy, why can't he change his habit of being a nice guy? It's the same everywhere. Isn't he meddling in other people's business? If Li Anping were to join the great Xia Dragonfinch in the future, his life would be even more difficult. Boss Xia would not be able to protect him forever. Thinking of this, Qian Duo stood up. Are you done? It's enough for an old man to bully a newcomer. Shindong, you've been working into Xia Dragonfinch for so many years. Are you going to make life difficult for a newcomer today? Shindong wanted to retort, but when he saw the coldness in Qian Duo's eyes, he trembled inexplicably, as if he had thought of something terrible. He mumbled and turned away. Bastard, Qian Duo, you're still wet behind the ears. Wait until I'm under His Highness. See how I'll torture you to death. Stay under Xia Laikong and wait for your deaths. When Qian Duo saw that Shindong had stopped talking, he didn't pursue the matter. After all, the other party had more experience than him, so he couldn't be too rude. He looked at Sun Hao, who was winking at him, shook his head, sighed, and sat back down. As for Li Anping, he didn't even look at him. He had only interrupted to help Sun Hao out. After that, the group began to barbecue. However, when eating and talking, everyone except Sun Hao intentionally or unintentionally distanced themselves from Li Anping by a certain distance. Their thoughts were no more than the following. Some people thought, although Li Anping's strength is not bad, his qualifications and battle experience are far inferior to Shindong's. Since Shindong doesn't like Li Anping, why should he take the risk of offending Shindong and befriend Li Anping? Some people thought of their own past, another arrogant newcomer. Basically, everyone who joins the Xia Dragonfinch will go through this process. Before joining, they think that their abilities are unparalleled and that their days of being invincible are just around the corner. Then, after joining, they see one real monster after another, and their confidence is constantly destroyed. They either become disheartened or desperately try to become stronger. There are also some people who had opinions about Li Anping's actions and thought that he was a dangerous person. Being too extreme is not a good thing. Li Anping is just like that. He keeps killing people, even if they're all bad people, and he's already above the law and the country. Whether it's his thoughts or his actions, they're all too dangerous. If one day he gains great power, no one knows what will happen. Unfortunately, in Xia Dragonfinch, he really has such a chance. Chapter 91. In a lively gathering, Li Anping was soon isolated. Even if Sun Hao wanted to accompany Li Anping, he was soon dragged away to play games. After eating the barbecue, everyone organized a dodgeball game. Other than Li Anping and a few ability users who didn't like sports, everyone else participated. Sun Hao walked in front of Li Anping and asked if he wanted to play, but Li Anping refused. Then, Sun Hao was dragged away. His speed was very useful in dodgeball games. He was considered a main player. Li Anping watched from outside for a while and found that the rules of this game were similar to ordinary people's. They were divided into two teams and threw the ball to each other. They could catch the ball, but if the ball hit their body, they would be eliminated. Obviously, Sun Hao's reaction and speed were very suitable for this game. After dodging all kinds of balls, no one threw a ball to him. Li Anping also saw the other people's abilities. For example, Qinduo's ability seemed to be psychokinesis. The ball would always slow down in front of him, and then he would pick it up and throw it out. The ball he threw out was shockingly powerful. Even if the opponent could catch it, they would often be knocked out. There was also Shindong. His speed wasn't as fast as Sun Hao, and his strength was only at the level of an ordinary soldier. Li Anping couldn't see his ability, but he didn't get eliminated because of his experience and skills. As expected of someone who had been working into Xia Dragonfinch for more than 10 years, he did have some ability. During the game, Shendong gave Li Onping a few provocative looks. However, all of them were ignored by Li Onping. After watching for a while, Li Onping left. He walked towards the forest and planned to stroll around the forest park. After staying in the city for so long, it was rare to see so much green. He felt good. However, on the field, Shendong was also knocked out by a ball a few minutes after Li Onping left. What's going on, old Shen? Usually, you and young Master Qian are the ones who last until the end. Did you fool around somewhere last night? Don't spout nonsense. Shendong joked with a few of his teammates. Everyone makes mistakes. Just watch me in the second round. I'm going to the bathroom first. With that, he walked in the direction of the bathroom. However, after entering the forest, a cold smile appeared on his face as he looked in the direction where Li Onping had disappeared. Li Onping strolled through the forest, looking at the boundless sea of trees in front of him. His eyes were blank, because he was thinking about something as he walked. He had been in Tianjing for some time, and his strength had improved a lot. He had also done a lot of things that he wanted to do, but he found that he was becoming less and less concerned about human lives. In the past month, he had killed many people. Perhaps he would kill even more people in the future. But was there any point in doing so? He had killed so many people, but as far as he could see, there were still endless sins in this world. As he devoured more and more souls, Li Onping felt that his murderous nature seemed to be getting stronger and stronger. He also liked to use brute force more and more. He did not know what this meant, but he liked this feeling. Whether it was the Xia Dragonfinch, the government, or the army, he knew that as he became stronger day by day, none of these could stop him. This world should operate according to my will. They should revolve around me. When this thought first appeared, Li Onping suspected that Black had awakened. However, no matter how he called, he did not receive any response from Black. Then, the same thought popped up again and again. Originally, Xia Laikong treated Li Onping very well, so Li Onping was willing to give Xia Laikong some face. However, as Li Onping became stronger and stronger, he was more and more unwilling to accept the shackles of the world. This was almost like an instinct that kept emerging from his heart. Black's words once again rang in Li Onping's heart. Li Onping, you were born a demon. In the heart of your pursuit of justice for more than 20 years, you hid the deepest malice of mankind. To you, killing is as natural as breathing. Destroying lives is as simple as wearing clothes or eating. These are all your instincts. This is the real you. A faint red spread in Li Onping's eyes. In his consciousness, there seemed to be countless souls wailing. At this moment, with a whoosh, a stone suddenly flew from behind Li Onping's head. Li Onping tilted his head and dodged the stone. He turned his head and looked coldly in the direction where the stone came from. Shendong looked at him and smiled viciously. Then, he slowly walked over. I'll apologize to you first. Shendong shrugged and smiled. What I'm going to do to you next is purely to vent my anger. Shendong clenched his fists and continued. If you don't resist, we can end this quickly. Don't worry, I'll just break a few of your bones. I won't kill you. However, after Shendong said this, he realized that Li Onping had disappeared. Only then did he realize that Fang Xingjian had walked past him. How is this possible? How'd he do it? Shendong gathered a large ball of Psyche in his right hand and was about to blast it toward Li Onping, who had just walked past him. However, he only turned halfway when he felt a sharp pain at the back of his head. Then, his vision turned black and he fainted on the ground. Before he fainted, Shendong's heart had been shrouded in fear. Whether it was Li Onping's strange speed or his careless appearance, everything pointed to one fact. The man in front of him, Li Onping, was a monster whose strength was far beyond his. Seeing that Shendong had been knocked out, Li Onping withdrew his right hand and didn't even look at Shendong, who was on the ground. To him, he just walked past him casually and then casually hit the back of his head with his palm. As for whether Shendong was dead or alive, Li Onping didn't care. He had already given Xia Laikong face by not killing him directly with one punch. However, in this way, he was not in the mood to continue attending the party. Without saying goodbye to Sun Hao, Li Onping went home alone. When Li Onping returned home, he had nothing to do. After surfing the net for a while, he thought that it would be better to practice on the lawn. He first pressed his legs, and then did a set of warm-up exercises. Then, he suddenly waved his palm across the air. The white shockwave dispersed countless leaves of grass. Li Onping reluctantly stopped. He didn't dare to continue practicing, or else he would destroy the lawn again. Li Onping could only practice the basic movements like straight punches, side kicks, and uppercuts. However, even if it was some basic fighting movements, Li Onping practiced very seriously. Every bit of strength was meticulous. It looked as accurate as a textbook. The foundation was the foundation of everything. No matter how powerful the martial arts were, the root of it was the combination of these basic skills. Li Onping practiced for more than 2 hours. When Xia Yinyan walked out of the gate, she saw Li Onping standing on the lawn and practicing straight punches. Xia Yinyan put down the phone in her hand. She looked at Li Onping in surprise and said sarcastically, "How rare. How long has it been since I saw you practice like this?" Li Onping replied while practicing, "I've been practicing. It's just that you haven't seen it." Xia Yinyan curled her lips. She was too lazy to argue with Li Onping. She looked at the phone and dialed again. However, no one picked up. It was a voicemail. Xia Yinyan said angrily, "Song Tian, you've grown up, haven't you? If you have the guts, don't call me back. Let me tell you, if you don't apologize to me by 12 o'clock today, don't ever call me again." Li Onping asked, "Did you guys have a fight?" "He actually dared to stand me up," Xia Yinyan said angrily. "He made me wait for 2 hours in vain. And he said something came up and stood me up. I'm so angry." Li Onping felt a little strange. Didn't Song Tian usually want to accompany Xia Yinyan 24/7? Why did he stand her up this time? And he didn't even call to apologize. Then Xia Yinyan made a few more calls. Song Tian didn't pick up any of them. Xia Yinyan almost exploded in anger. Li Onping felt that something was wrong. On the other side, Song Tian looked at the noisy phone and turned it to silent. He picked up the landline next to him and made a call. "Hello, how's it going?" Shindong's voice came from the other end. It's fine." Song Tian frowned and said, "Make it clear." Shindong's voice seemed to be a little hesitant. "Don't worry, young Master Song. I taught him a lesson. He vomited blood. But after all, Xia Laikong is protecting him. I hid him in places that couldn't be detected and didn't leave him with any injuries. Didn't I say you don't need to worry about Xia Laikong? How did you do it?" Shindong said seriously, "That won't do. After all, Xia Laikong is also a level 5 ability user. If he really gets angry, forget it. I'll do it myself." Song Tian hung up and looked at his phone. When the phone flashed again, he saw the name Xia Yinyan on the screen. Song Tian revealed a cold smile. "When your grandfather isn't protecting you, see how I'll play with you." Chapter 92. This week, because of a small recommendation, every day until Sunday, there will be 3 chapters at 10 o'clock, 4 o'clock, and 2200 hours. But the current results of this book are really bad. It doesn't even exceed 300. But the readers who can read this chapter still have some expectations for this book. Thank you very much. Originally, I don't like to talk about these things in chapters, but now the results are too bleak. I just hope that the friends who read this and think that this book is okay can help me and click on the bookmark button and give me a few recommendation tickets. Thank you. The next day, Li Onping received a call from Li Qian early in the morning. Wei Shishir's matter is a bit strange. "Oh, how strange?" Li Onping asked. He asked Li Qian to investigate Wei Shishir's matter some time ago. This is a little bit of information he left behind in Zhongdu. Li Onping originally asked Li Qian to investigate Wei Shishir's whereabouts, and then he will personally take revenge. I checked Wei Shishir's file. It seems that there is no problem. But after sending people to do a field check, I found that her high school, junior high school, elementary school, all her experiences are fake. I sent people to investigate her class. No one knows her at all. Li Onping's eyes narrowed, like a tiger hunting for food. That means you can't find her? Not yet. I checked again and found that Wei Shishir may be related to a certain government department. Li Onping said, I don't care about this. I just want you to find her, no matter what. No matter what, this woman must die. I understand. Li Onping hung up the phone and once again recalled the things in Zhongdu. Thinking that Wei Shishir is not dead, he can't help but have a tyrannical feeling in his heart. Gotcha. Li Onping directly squeezed the landline on the side and cracked it. He took a deep breath and directly threw the phone into the trash can. At this moment, the sound of footsteps could be heard from the stairs. Xia Yunyan walked down the stairs with an anxious look on her face. What's wrong? Grandpa. Grandpa is in trouble. Xia Yunyan's face was full of panic. Grandpa was ambushed by the Fire Dragon Vanguard and is seriously injured. I have to go see him. Where is he? I will go with you. Xia Yunyan hurriedly put on her clothes. When she heard Li Onping's words, she shook her head. He was sent to a secret hospital. You can't go in. I'll go first. Looking at Xia Yunyan's back as she left, Lise. He sure. Something big has happened. The strongest warrior of the Flame Dragon Vanguard, the Nether King, teamed up with the Thunder Emperor, the White Short Star, and the Blood Demon to ambush Xiao Laikong. Although he managed to escape in the end, he was severely injured and on the verge of death. Any one of these four names in the north would make anyone's heart tremble. They were Fire Dragon Vanguard's only 4 level 5 ability users. No one would have thought that they would ambush Xiao Laikong at the same time. How is that possible? Xiao Yekong's draconic elephant reincarnations only needs one clone to be able to revive. How could he be seriously injured? Li Onping said in disbelief. Li Qian's voice sounded very worried. I don't know. That's not the problem now. Shen Dong and a group of people were transferred 10 minutes ago. Xiao Yekong's men are now half gone. Plus, he's seriously injured and on the verge of death. We don't know if he can be saved. Our position now is very awkward. Li Onping thought for a while and said, Don't worry. Continue to pay attention to these things and contact me at any time. Don't worry. I'm here. Okay. Li Qian hung up. In the next few weeks, things took a turn for the worse, developing faster than Li Onping expected. Xia Yunyan left early and returned late every day. No one knew what she was busy with. However, Xiao Yekong's body seemed to be deteriorating day by day, and the current medical treatment was unable to cure him. The men he brought with him were also killed in the ambush. And in Tianjing, when it rains, it pours. Shindong brought a group of people to join Songbang's side, and Xiao Yekong's men immediately fell apart. Many of Xiao Yekong's authority, position, and power were eroded. Only a small group of people, led by the Qian Duo and Sun Hao, remained. The families, businesses, and various forces that were on good terms with Xia Laikong also became cowards at the same time. The people who used to think of all sorts of ways to flatter Xia Yunyan were now avoiding her in all sorts of ways. As a woman, Xia Yunyan could only watch as Xiao Yekong's authority and position were divided up in an instant. What was more troublesome was that Xia Laikong lost the battle this time, implicating countless soldiers and causing hundreds of millions of losses. For a time, the army was denouncing him, and his assets were sealed. Even Xia Yunyan, Sun Hao, and even Li Qian had to be investigated. Yunyan, I'm sorry. I have to prepare for the overseas study exam. My mother told me not to go out for a while. Let's meet again next time. Yunyan, Uncle has been too busy recently. I'll come look for you when I'm done. Yunyan, this matter has blown up. His Majesty is furious, and even King Song has been scolded badly. No one dares to step forward. Song Tian, please help me. Xia Yunyan looked pitifully at Song Tian. This was the man who she used to call whenever she wanted. This time, she waited at his door for 3 whole hours before he finally showed up. Unexpectedly, Song Tian only smiled and said, I'm sorry, Yunyan, but you must know that the situation at the northern front is very tense, and Elder Xia lost the battle this time. My grandfather is also under a lot of pressure. How can Elder Xia's position be left empty at a time like this? I know, and I understand, but my grandfather needs to receive the best treatment. They want to remove him from the leader's hospital and transfer him to a normal hospital. Xia Yunyan grabbed Song Tian's arm and pleaded, "Just let Uncle Song say something. My grandfather's injuries are really serious. If he's transferred to a normal hospital now, it'll take his life. Moreover, my bank cards have been frozen. I can't afford the medical fees right now." Song Tian smiled and put his mouth close to Xia Yunyan's ear. He said in a low voice, "Sleep with me for a night, and I'll help you." Xia Yunyan was stunned. Then she swung her palm at Song Tian. However, Song Tian casually caught it. Seeing Xia Yunyan glaring at him with eyes that were spitting fire, Song Tian smiled and said, "Xia Yunyan, didn't I chase after you in the past because you had a good grandfather? But I'm telling you now, your grandfather is finished. He's dead for sure. But if you come to me now, you can still sell me for a good price. In a few days, you won't even be able to sell me for this little price. You bastard." Xia Yunyan waved her other hand, which was covered with Nian Qi, at Song Tian. With a bang, Xia Yunyan touched her cheek and fell to the ground. She looked at Song Tian in disbelief. Song Tian laughed and said, "Do you think you're still the young lady of the past? Let me tell you, if your grandfather wasn't Xia Laikong, do you think I would chase after you so wholeheartedly? Do you think you're beautiful? Let me tell you, at this level, I could have slept with anyone at the age of 16. With a few sneers, Song Tian walked past Xia Yunyan and left. He still said, "Call me when you figure it out. You know my phone number? Ha ha ha." Xia Yunyan returned home in a daze. She didn't even notice that it was raining. Li Anping looked at Xia Yunyan, stumbling toward the stairs. He blocked her path and said, "What's wrong with you? Why didn't you use an umbrella when it's raining? You're all wet. It's all over. Ha ha, there's no one to rely on. None of them are good people." Xia Yunyan shouted, "They're all a bunch of bastards who eat people without spitting out their bones." Li Anping watched as Xia Yunyan scolded her former friends, sisters, uncles, and uncles. She scolded them until she was hoarse. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. I'll go up and rest for a while," Xia Yunyan said expressionlessly. Seeing Xia Yunyan walk up the stairs, Li Anping couldn't help but say, "If you need any help, tell me. I can think of a way." Xia Yunyan suddenly turned around and looked at Li Anping. She laughed and said, "I thought I had a lot of friends, but in the end, you're the only one willing to help me." The next moment, Xia Yunyan shook her head and said, "Thank you for your good intentions, but I don't need your help right now. I'll take care of it. When I need you, I'll tell you." Xia Yunyan didn't believe that Li Anping, a level 1 ability user, could take care of the current situation. She only said this because she didn't want to hurt Li Anping's good intentions. In the following half a month, the situation became worse and worse. The other level 5 ability user that Xia Laikong was on good terms with, Flying General, was still fighting on the northern front. It was rumored that he and Zhurong were working together, but they were always suppressed by the enemy's Blood Devil, White Short Star, and Lei Di. Moreover, the enemy's strongest Pluto hadn't made a move yet. The Xia Dragonfinch was already preparing a troop to reinforce the northern front. However, the lack of a level 5 ability user wasn't that easy to make up for. The normal people still thought that they were living in an era of peace, but among the upper echelons of Tianjing, the smell of war was getting heavier and heavier. A feeling of an impending storm filled the entire Xia Dragonfinch. However, Li Anping's life was still pretty much the same as before. Every day he would go online and kill some bad guys. However, now, other than Li Qian, there was no one left to deal with the aftermath. Sun Hao also didn't have time to take him to the training room. He could only casually train at home every day. In addition to his previous gains, his current physical fitness had reached 6. 4 in strength, 5. 3 in agility, and 7. 2 in stamina. "How is it?" Li Anping asked Li Qian on the other end of the phone. "It's not optimistic. The doctor has already given Xia Laikong the death sentence. He said that he'll probably be in a vegetative state for the rest of his life." Li Qian said, although Qian Duo and Sun Hao have been holding on, they've already made the list. They'll be sent to the northern front together under Zhurong's command. Xiao Yekong's ambush was very strange. After it happened, A bunch of people immediately hit him while he was down. Shandong also followed him out. Don't you think it's too much of a coincidence? Li Qian said in surprise. Are you saying there's a conspiracy? I don't know. I just think it's too much of coincidence. Also, what about Wei Shi? It's a little strange. I can't find any information about her. Either she doesn't exist, or all her information has been deliberately destroyed. If there's really someone who can do this, I'm afraid he or she has a high position in Xia's government. Is that so? In Song Bang's office, Shindong was standing in front of the office, looking at him with a flattering expression. Sit down. I have something to ask you. Go ahead, go ahead. I'll just stand. Li Anping, do you think he's worth recruiting? Song Bang looked at him and said, Recently, when I was cleaning up the trash left by Xia Laikong, I saw some information about him. I have to admit that I made a mistake. How could that be? Shindong was excited, but he immediately calmed himself down. He knew that being too excited would make him look suspicious, so he said calmly, I won't hide it from you. I originally thought that this Li Anping had a lot of potential and wanted to get on his good side. But in the end, this kid was completely ungrateful. He didn't take us seniors seriously at all, and even came to challenge me alone. Oh, he challenged you? Yes, he came alone secretly. Just the two of us. Shindong boasted shamelessly. In the end, I took care of him in 2 or 3 moves. I saw that the reports about him were all exaggerated. His ability is not bad, but he's only strong and fast. There's nothing else. Also, he's inexperienced. When he meets someone with a slightly targeted ability, he's immediately caught off guard. Okay, Song Bang nodded. I got it. You can go. Okay, then you do what you need to do. If there's anything, feel free to call me. Seeing that Shundong had left, Song Bang looked at Li Anping's information on the computer. After looking at it for a few minutes, he opened another file. It was all about Li Qian's data, especially the documents she had recently borrowed and the file she had flipped through. When he saw the name Wei Shi, Song Bang's eyes flashed with a cold light. He thought for a while, and in the end, he directly deleted Li Anping and Li Qian's files. Since he had made the decision, the information of these two people was meaningless in his eyes. Chapter 93. Li Anping was lying on the bed. The TV was playing a piece of news. Breaking news, a group of armed criminals rushed into the Blue City airport. They cut down anyone they saw. There were casualties at the scene. After a large number of police officers arrived at the scene, gunshots were heard from the airport. At present, the Blue City Airport road has been completely blocked. When he saw the news, Li Anping suddenly jumped up and turned on the computer on the desk. He knew that this kind of news must be spread the fastest on the internet. The news reported on the TV is often a step behind. He went on the internet and looked at the forum. Sure enough, there were already many posts about the violent conflict. There were also many photos taken by passers-by at the scene. Li Anping roughly looked at them and estimated that this attack was not as simple as a simple violent conflict. 3 hours later, Xia Yunyan knocked on Li Anping's door. Her face was still wet with tears. Grandpa woke up. He wants to see you. Okay. Li Anping did not say anything, put on a coat, and followed Xia Yunyan out. After going out, he and Xia Yunyan got into a black car. The car was followed by several vans and motorcycles. He did not know if they were protecting or monitoring. After driving for a few kilometers, the motorcade directly turned into a remote square and then drove down a passage into the underground. After entering the underground, the windows of the car were covered with a layer of black so that the people sitting in the car could not see the scene outside the car. The motorcade drove in the passage. Every few kilometers they would be checked. The entire underground looked like a steel structure. It was completely a militarized underground base. Li Anping sat in the car and looked very patient. Even when he was asked to be searched, he did not show a trace of impatience. Xia Yunyan, who sat next to him, could not help but ask, Aren't you curious why they called you here? You'll know when you get there. Hearing Li Anping's answer, Xia Yunyan stopped talking. The convoy calmly drove through the underground tunnel. At first, Li Onping was able to determine the approximate location based on the center of gravity of the car, the displacement, the sounds outside the car, and the flow of the air. However, as the route of the convoy became more and more complicated, Li Onping gradually lost his sense of direction. 20 minutes later, Li Onping's nose suddenly smelled the fragrance of soil, grass, and trees. Then, the darkness on the window suddenly dissipated, revealing the scene outside the car. Woods, sunshine, fields, and gardens. The motorcade stopped in front of the white building in the middle of the garden. Li Onping got out of the car and looked at the greenery around him. He then looked up at the sunlight above his head. He asked, "Are we still underground?" "Yes, all of them are man-made environments." The doctors believe that such environments are conducive to the recovery of patients. Li Onping shrugged and followed Xia Yunyun to the hospital. Behind them were more than a dozen uniformed soldiers. Xia Laikong was still in the intensive care unit. Before entering, Li Onping and Xia Yunyun were asked to enter the disinfection room and change their clothes. When Li Onping entered the ward, he saw an old man lying on the bed like a mummy. His face was withered, and his limbs were as thin as matchsticks. Xia Yekong's body was filled with catheters. All kinds of unknown liquids Li Onping could not identify were constantly being injected into his body. When he saw Li Onping, the corner of his mouth revealed an ugly smile. "I was careless. I didn't expect to be ambushed. There's no need to greet me. If you have anything to say, just say it. I'll help you if I can." Xia Laikong opened his mouth and wanted to smile, but it seemed to pull on his wound. His face revealed an ugly expression. Xia Yunyun asked anxiously, "Grandpa, are you okay?" "I'm fine," Xia Laikong said. "Yunyun, you go out first. I'll talk to Li Onping alone for a while." Xia Yunyun hesitated for a moment, but finally left under Xia Liekong's urging. In the hospital's monitoring room, Du Jiao stared at Xia Laikong and Li Onping on the screen. He was specially sent by Song Bang to monitor Xia Laikong. Why aren't they talking? Why are they just looking at each other? This is the power of the Phantom Dragon, one of Xia Liekong's 8 dragons and 8 faces. They are communicating with their minds, Lung Hong said. Blue and white uniform, straight and slender legs, and a cold and beautiful face, full of uniform desire. Du Jiao glanced at Lung Hong. Although she was very beautiful, as an old partner, Du Jiao knew how vicious the beauty in front of him was. He did not linger on Lung Hong's beauty. Du Jiao asked directly, "Can you eavesdrop?" Lung Hong's ability was a kind of mental virus, which was also related to consciousness. That was why Du Jiao asked this question. "I definitely can under normal circumstances, but Xia Laikong is seriously injured. I can give it a try." In the ward, Xia Laikong and Li Onping looked at each other silently, but on the level of consciousness, they never stopped communicating. "You saw the news this morning, right? Blue City Airport?" Li Onping asked. He did not understand why Xia Laikong suddenly mentioned this matter. "Yes, it's the work of the True God cult. They have been wanting to separate the northeast region of Blue City for a long time. This time, when they saw that I was seriously injured and on the verge of death, the pressure on the northern front suddenly increased, so they began to probe. What does it have to do with me?" Li Onping was puzzled. "I hope you can work with the people sent by Xia Dragonfinch to eliminate the rioters of the True God cult." "Are you crazy?" Li Onping said indifferently. "At this time, why are you still concerned about the rioters? Don't worry, I'm fine. But in order to treat my injuries, I will fall into a deep sleep. This deep sleep may be a few months or maybe a few years. If I don't solve this matter, I won't be able to sleep peacefully." Xia Liekong's pale face showed a smile. "The current leader of the True God cult is Qing Chan. This time, he has made such a big move, so he must have a trump card. I know him very well, but Song Bang doesn't think so. His attention is all on the north, so he doesn't notice that there are many diseases in the empire. The people he sent definitely won't be able to win against Qing Chan. I hope you can go with them. The only person I can ask for help now is you. As long as Qing Chan is suppressed, other people in the country will not dare to follow the rioters. As for the problems abroad, I can only trust others." Li Onping also knew something about the True God cult. Some time ago, he had seen some news about the True God cult. He had also fought with the Holy Alliance of the True God cult. It could be said that this was one of the most powerful organizations among the people in Xia. Every move of theirs was related to the stability of the situation in Xia. Li Onping looked at Xia Laikong. After a long time, he responded, "This time you were ambushed. Didn't you suspect your own people?" Xia Laikong smiled and said, "The overall situation is more important." Psycho. Li Onping directly scolded in the ward this time, then turned around and left. Xia Laikong just looked at him calmly. After a few steps, Li Onping thought that the True God cult must have a lot of followers, and the Holy Alliance must have a lot of high-level ability users. This was actually an open and above-board opportunity for him to eat. Through this battle, he could absorb the souls of many ability users to strengthen himself. So Li Onping turned around and looked at Xia Laikong and said, "To be honest, these recent events have already made me very unhappy. I don't understand why you still bind yourself when you have such great power. But since you've helped me before, I'll go and destroy that cult. But for the following matters, I will act completely according to my own will. There's no need to talk about joining the Xia Dragonfinch. I don't want to be dragged down by those trash." After saying this, he didn't pay any more attention to Xia Laikong and directly turned around and left. Xia Laikong finally said, "During this period of rest, can you help me protect Yinyan?" Li Onping stopped and coldly snorted, "You really know how to order people around. Don't worry, she won't die." In front of Song Bang's desk, Du Jiao and Lung Hong were reporting today's events. Lung Hong tried to eavesdrop on the conversation between Li Onping and Xia Laikong, but failed. But she saw Li Onping leave angrily. Then, a few hours later, Xia Laikong fell into a coma again. Song Bang heard the two of them, thought for a moment, and said, "Okay, I got it. You can leave now." "Yes." The two of them respectfully left. On his computer screen, there was an email from Xia Laikong. It was an application for Li Onping to participate in the assault against the True God cult as a special consultant. The two of them had a falling out. Xia Laikong wants to sell out Li Onping. Li Onping is not worth much. Song Bang thought for a moment. To be safe, he decided to choose Shun Dong, Du Jiao, and Lung Hong to go to Blue City together to eliminate the higher-ups of the True God cult. Shun Dong could suppress Li Onping, and Xia Laikong was in a coma again. Du Jiao and Lung Hong stayed in the hospital to monitor him. Plus, these three people's abilities could be matched with each other. There was no problem in completing the task. As for Li Onping, Song Bang picked up a secret mobile phone and dialed a number. "Hello, Mr. Fong? I think the opportunity to promise you has come. I hope the last incident will not affect the relationship between our two countries." So, at the next day's battle meeting, the four of them decided to go to Blue City under Song Bang's instructions. They set off that day and returned the next day. On the other side, seeing that Xia Laikong was in a coma again, Song Tian received a phone call. "Hello." Song Tian picked up the phone casually, but the voice on the other side made him excited. "What? Have you figured it out? Okay, I'll send someone to pick you up later. I'll wait for you at the hotel." After hanging up the phone, Song Tian laughed excitedly. His long-cherished wish had finally come true. How could he not be happy? How could he not be excited? He paced back and forth a few steps and suddenly opened a cabinet in his room. There were various uniforms, ropes, and asterisk in it. A trace of lust flashed in Song Tian's eyes. Chapter 94. On the runway of the military airport, Du Jiao, Lung Hong, and Shindong stood on one side and talked cheerfully. Only when they saw Li Onping on the side would they sneer. But Du Jiao and Lung Hong didn't notice that whenever Shindong looked at Li Onping, his eyes would always be evasive. There was a box beside Li Onping's feet. Inside was his high-frequency knife. Li Onping didn't pay attention to the three people. He took out his phone and called Li Qian. "Hello, I'm at the airport. Did you call Xia Yinyan?" "I called and asked him. I can see him anytime. Li Qian hinted that she had used her ability to monitor Xia Yunyun in order to prevent the phone from being tapped. Although Xia Yunyun was a level 3 ability user, Li Qian and Xia Yunyun knew each other, so asking a few more questions wouldn't arouse any suspicion. This was what Li Onping told her to do. As long as she monitored Xia Yunyun every day, he could protect her. Li Qian asked softly, "When will you come back?" "It's 4 in the afternoon right now. I'll probably be back before 12. Don't worry, it's not much different from eating dinner." What Li Qian didn't know was that in many ways, Li Onping going to the true God religion to kill people was no different from eating dinner for him. Okay, knowing that Li Onping didn't like to be long-winded, Li Qian hung up the phone after a few words. At this time, Du Jiao, who was beside Li Onping, also walked up. "Kid, I'm the leader of this operation. All the plans have to go according to what I say. Do you understand?" Li Onping glanced at the fierce-looking man and didn't say anything. Du Jiao didn't mind. Ability users were above ordinary people. How many of them didn't have a bit of pride? He continued, "We will use the assault boat to land directly at the true God called Stronghold. When the time comes, you just have to stay where you are. We'll settle the rest. If you dare to make a move, I'll break your legs." Li Onping coldly glanced at Du Jiao. Just as he was considering whether to break Du Jiao's arms and legs, Shindong walked up from the side. "All right, Brother Jiao. There's no need to lower yourself to his level. Look, the plane is here. Let's go." After saying that, he pulled Du Jiao away and carefully sized up Li Onping, as if he was afraid that the other party would flare up. "Old Shun, what are you doing? Don't pull me. I'm not done yet." The venomous Jiao dragon was directly pulled onto the plane by Shindong. Although he was the team leader in name, it was only because Shindong had just been transferred to Songbang's team. Otherwise, regardless of whether it was in terms of experience or ability, Shindong should be the team leader. The group of 4 boarded the plane. After a series of roars, the plane flew up into the sky and headed toward the Blue City in the northeast. The cabin was divided into 2 sides, with a total of 20 seats. Each seat was encased in an egg-shaped structure. After Li Onping sat down, a hole opened up under his feet, and a wardrobe containing clothes rose up. "Please put on your combat uniform immediately." Hearing the voice from the broadcast, Li Onping took out his combat uniform. This was a set of black and gray clothing. The chest, abdomen, and other weak points of the body were covered with hard armor. The entire body, except for the head, was covered. What Li Onping didn't know was that this combat uniform was not only resistant to cold, heat, and ventilation, but also resistant to cuts and cuts. It could even withstand gunfire from small-caliber rifles. There was also a communication system, a positioning system, and more than 20 tactical pockets inside. Even in the Xia army, only the A Special Forces could wear it. Although it couldn't be compared to the psychic defense of high-level ability users, it was still a very good tool. Not only Li Onping, but also Du Jiao, Lung Hong, and Shun Dong in the cabin all put on their combat uniforms. No one would say that they were safer. Then Li Onping plugged the earpiece into his ear according to the broadcast instructions and put the special contact lenses on the surface of his eyeballs. A few seconds later, a series of broken images flashed, and then Li Onping saw a set of information. At the same time, a voice came from the earpiece. The heads of several people appeared in front of Li Onping. The first young man with green hair is Qing Chan, the current leader of the True God sect. This violent terrorist attack was also planned by him. The remaining 3 men and 1 woman are the 4 emissaries of earth, water, wind, and fire. The doctrine of the True God sect believed that the world was made up of the 4 elements of earth, water, wind, and fire. The 4 emissaries represented the 4 elements, and their status in the sect was second only to the leader. They led the armed forces of the True God sect, the Holy Alliance, and took orders directly from Qing Chan. According to the observation of the members of the Xia Dragonfinch in Blue City, the 4 emissaries should all be level 3 ability users, and the leader, Qing Chan, should be a top level 4 ability user. It was worth noting that the True God sect had a very deep foundation into Xia. It was rare for the 4 emissaries and the leader to gather together, so they had to kill all 4 of them at once as soon as possible. Otherwise, as long as one of them was left, given the number of followers of the True God sect, it would be enough to set off a storm into Xia. When Li Onping finished reading the information, Du Jiao's voice came from the earpiece. Then leave that Qin Chan to me. Old Shun, you and Lung Hong can each take 2 emissaries. Lung Hong said lightly, no problem. Shen Dong glanced at Li Onping subconsciously, and then said, no problem for me. Li Onping didn't pay attention to the 3 of them, and directly closed his eyes to sleep. When they saw his cowardly appearance, Lung Hong and the venomous Jiao dragon revealed a trace of disdain. They were even more convinced that the other party was at the mercy of others because his backer was gone. Only Shun Dong's heart was full of contradictions. He didn't expect to be sent together with the emissaries after Songbang said that he could easily suppress Li Onping. How can this be? How can this be? How can I be with this monster? Shen Dong peeked at Li Onping's sleeping appearance, and his mind was in a mess. I can't let others know that Li Onping is stronger than me. I can't give him a chance to attack. But is he really stronger than me? Last time, I fainted directly. Could it be that I accidentally fell into his trap? No matter what, his ability level is only level 1. Could it be that his ability is level 1? After thinking about it, Shun Dong's eyes gradually became firm. No matter what, for safety's sake, don't give him a chance to attack. Use the fastest time to kill Qin Chan and the 4 emissaries. I'll find a chance to test him later. Up until now, the few people present didn't take the True God religion's ability user seriously. 2 hours later, under the night sky, the plane finally arrived in the sky above Blue City. The announcement in the cabin sounded. We have arrived at our destination. Please get ready. The assault boat will be launched in 5 minutes. We have arrived at our destination. Please get ready. The assault boat will be launched in 5 minutes. Li Onping's face showed a hint of strangeness. They were still high in the sky. Although he could feel the plane gradually descending, what did it mean to launch the assault boat in 5 minutes? Du Jiao saw Li Onping's puzzled look and sneered. Silly boy, we're going down later. Don't be so scared that you pee in your pants. If that happens, the Xia Dragonfinch's face will be lost because of you. Lung Hong, who was at the side, also laughed when she heard this. Only Shindong had a serious look on his face. He wanted to attack the moment they landed. He wanted to complete the mission in the shortest time possible and kill all the targets. A few minutes later, the plane shook and the 4 people's seats began to sink gradually. The original egg-shaped structure was covered by a layer of metal. Then, some blue liquid was filled into the egg-shaped sphere. As a whole, it looked like a black metal egg was filled with liquid. Li Onping and the other 3 people were in this liquid. The buffer liquid in the assault boat doesn't affect breathing. After landing, the buffer liquid will evaporate in a few seconds after coming into contact with the air. It won't affect the user's combat ability. Following the instructions in the headset, Li Onping took a deep breath in the liquid and found that there was no problem with breathing. Boom! Li Onping only felt his body sink, and a strong feeling of falling spread over him. Looking from the outside, 4 black metal eggs were thrown down directly. They were like black meteors falling toward a huge palace on the ground. Looking from midair, the palace below them was about the size of an ordinary town. More than 100,000 believers of the True God religion gathered here. This was the sacred ground of the True God religion for several hundred years. Every day, tens of thousands of believers would come here to worship. After falling from a height of several thousand meters, the assault boat's speed exceeded 100 meters per second in just over 10 seconds. The entire cabin was shaking at a crazy speed. Li Onping could hear a terrifying whistling sound. It was the sound of the assault boat cutting through the air. Wow! Du Jiao's shout could be heard from the headset. Brat, you didn't piss your pants, did you? If you did, stay in the assault boat and don't come out. Otherwise, I'll beat you until half your body is paralyzed. Ha ha ha! Amidst Du Jiao's maniacal laughter, for huge metal eggs fell from the sky and smashed into the true god religion's palace like meteors. After a series of earth-shattering noises, a large number of buildings started to collapse. Cries of shock and agony could be heard continuously. Amidst this chaos, 3 experts filled with malice stepped onto this sacred ground. Chapter 95. Just before the assault boat landed, in a large hall in the center of the true god religion, a man in a white robe with green hair was sitting on the throne in the center. There were 4 people standing below him. The man's face looked perfect and flawless. It was a face that could make people feel ashamed of their own inferiority. The handsome man was looking at the sky and muttering, "They're here, Your Majesty." A man's voice came from the mouth of a man who was covered in rocks and looked more like a monster than a human. "Leave this to us. Your body is priceless. You shouldn't be standing on the front line." It's okay, Boulder. The Xia Dragonfinch doesn't understand our situation at all. They'll only send small fries this time. The man in the white robe smiled. "Kill them all." "Yes." The 4 of them replied at the same time. Then, with a swoosh, they all disappeared. Only the man in the white robe, or Ching Chan, was left sitting on the throne alone. When the assault boat hit the ground, the entire palace began to shake violently. Stones and dust kept falling from the ceiling. The man didn't care at all. He just looked at the place where the sound of the collision came from with a cold smile. The psychic energy on his body almost filled the entire hall and protected it. It seemed that no matter how strong the vibration was, it wouldn't be able to destroy the hall. It gave people a feeling that it was as powerful as a prison and as powerful as the sea. Even people who didn't have any religion would have the illusion of being a god if they appeared here. Almost at the moment when the assault boat hit the ground, Shindong had already recovered. He opened the cabin door and rushed out. The assault boats of the other 3 people were more than 10 meters away from him. They were in different rooms. Shindong used his psychic energy to sense and immediately sensed the existence of Ching Chan. That enormous psychic energy was as obvious as the moon in the dark night. It was impossible not to notice it. Peak level 4? Shundong, who was in the middle of a battle, was calmer than usual. He carefully sensed the situation of the opponent's psychic energy. "I didn't sense anything from the other 4 emissaries, but there are still a lot of small fries. They're all level 1 and 2 aptitude users. They should be the Holy Alliance's soldiers. Let's go check out Qin Chan's situation first. If possible, we'll get rid of him." Thinking up to this point, Shundong compared the map displayed on the contact lens. Then he took a step forward, and his whole body floated up. Then he stepped on the wall, and his whole body flew out like an arrow. This was his ability, weight control. He could freely control the amount of gravity his body was subjected to. On Lianping's side, he landed at the same place as Du Jiao and Lung Hong. Where they were, the entire house had been reduced to rubble. When Lung Hong rushed out of the assault boat, Du Jiao was already standing outside. She looked at Du Jiao and said, "There are masters." "Yeah." Du Jiao twisted his neck, looked at Qing Chan's location, and said, "I'll go first." Lianping's assault boat did not react at all, let alone open up. Lianping did not walk out from inside, and there was no sound from his earpiece either. It was as if he had lost consciousness. The 2 of them did not ask about Lianping's situation. In fact, many level 1 newbies would faint from fright when they were transported down from an assault boat for the first time. After all, not everyone was so courageous and had such a good physique. After seeing Du Jiao's figure disappear, Lung Hong looked at the broken walls and wreckage around her. Suddenly, she accelerated and ran to the side. Just as she ran, a green figure chased after her closely. Clouds of air surrounded him, making it impossible to see his figure clearly. The 2 of them, one chasing and the other escaping, moved at an extremely fast speed. In the blink of an eye, they had crossed a distance of several hundred meters. That figure chased after Lung Hong, as he said, very sharp observation skills. "However, you won't be able to escape. After I kill you, I'll go and kill your accomplice. Who knows, He might have already been killed by my accomplice. Escape? You seem to have misunderstood something. Lung Hong suddenly turned and stopped. She looked at the green figure behind her and said, "The master we're talking about isn't you. It's him." Lung Hong pointed to Qing Chan's location and said, "Such astonishing qi. It's as obvious as the sun. It's hard not to notice it. As for Du Jiao, he just can't be bothered with the small fries." Lung Hong waved her hand, and two figures suddenly dashed out from the surrounding shadows. One of them rushed towards the figure who was surrounded by clouds of air, while the other took out a machine gun and shot at the figure. A terrifying tearing sound was heard. Before the person who dashed forward got close to the figure, he was swept up by a gray tornado and torn into countless pieces. As for the people who were shooting, the bullets were all blocked by the high-speed rotating gale when they hit the green figure. Then he was also torn into pieces by the tornado. But when the figure in the air saw the broken body under his feet, he let out an angry roar. The two people who suddenly appeared were actually dressed in the Holy Alliance's uniform. Then, one after another, people appeared around Lung Hong. They were all soldiers of the Holy Alliance. But now, their eyes were dull and their muscles were bulging. They looked more like zombies than humans. This was Lung Hong's ability, Mental Virus. She looked at the silhouette in the air and said, "Look at you. You're the wind messenger, right? When I was moving just now, I gathered some toys. Now I can play with you." Humph. The wind messenger snorted coldly and controlled a gust of wind to transmit his voice. "Everyone stay away from here. I will deal with her alone." The next moment, a terrifying wave spread out from the wind messenger's body. Like the end of the world, the wind covered the surrounding 300 meters. Lung Hong's face also changed at this moment. Level 4 ability user. The place where the 3 assault boats landed was now surrounded by the soldiers of the true God religion. Some of them were ability users of the Holy Alliance, and some are fully armed ordinary people. A man wearing a bulletproof vest and holding a submachine gun knocked on the assault boat that Li Onping was on. With a confused face, he said, "Why didn't this egg open? There's nothing inside? It can't be broken, right? Should we find a saw to cut it open?" Just when they were discussing what to do, in the darkness, a strong man slowly walked over. It might not be right to call him a man, because his body was covered by a layer of fine black scales. Even his head was covered. He didn't look like a human anymore. If there was someone here who knew what was what, he would recognize that this was the ability of the royal family of the Baiwa country, Kirin blood, and it looked much stronger than Fong cheese. Unfortunately, none of the people here recognized the Kirin blood. "Who are you? Stop, or we'll shoot." Facing the threats of these people, the man only looked at them with contempt. The next moment, he rushed into the crowd. Death screams and blood bloomed in an instant. It was like a wolf rushing into a flock of sheep. Machine guns were ineffective. Ordinary bullets couldn't penetrate the man's scales. Those ordinary level 1 and level 2 ability users were also useless. They couldn't even compare to machine guns, which could make the attacker retreat a few steps. The man wearing the black scales just casually broke their necks and tore open their chests. In less than 2 minutes, he killed more than 30 people present. Blood spilled all over his body and slowly flowed down from the scales. Then, he showed a troubled expression and looked at the assault boat that Li Onping was on. According to the information, there are a total of 4 people attacking here. Li Onping is one of them. He thought, "My mission this time is to kill Li Onping and avenge Fong Qi. But why is this guy hiding in the assault boat? This assault boat is not damaged even after being brought down from thousands of meters high. It's not ordinary sturdiness. With this kind of super alloy shell, even if a tank's main cannon bombarded it, it would be difficult to damage it. I can't open it by myself. Do I have to take him away? Should I try electric shock? Burn him? But where can I find the equipment here?" The man approached Li Onping's assault boat. He knocked on the surface of the boat and shook his head unhappily. But after thinking about it, he still punched it with a little force. With a bang, the man only felt a shock that made his hand a little numb. and the surface of the assault boat didn't leave a single mark. This thing is purely made of steel. It can't be broken by brute force. Are the people from Desya, Dragonfinch, all crazy, using this kind of thing to launch an air attack? The man stroked his slightly swollen hand in annoyance. With such thick armor, even if I use fire to roast it, I don't know how long it will take to roast the person inside to death. I have to think of another way. The man walked around the assault boat and suddenly thought, I should find where the door is. If there's only a door, then it's not a single body. Maybe I can use my ability to control electricity and stimulate the door to the assault boat to open the door. Thinking of this, the man immediately walked to the side of Lung Hong's assault boat that had already opened. He observed the position of the open door on the assault boat. It was because after the door of the assault boat was closed, it looked as if it had been formed into a single body. There wasn't even a single gap where the door should be. Therefore, it was very difficult to determine the position of the door just by looking at it. He needed to find an open one to compare. Therefore, after the man confirmed the position of the door by observing the other two assault boats, he walked back to the assault boat that Lianping was on. Looking around, the man finally determined the approximate position of the assault boat's door. However, he revealed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. This Lianping is too unlucky. To think that the door landed facing the ground. It's no wonder that he can't come out. The man then smiled. Now, I only need to push the assault boat and expose the position of the door. Lianping will probably come out himself. Thinking of this, the man took in a deep breath, and all the muscles in his body swelled up. I definitely won't be able to smash open this assault boat. However, if I push it, this assault boat weighs about 7 to 8 tons. Moreover, it's streamlined. Although it's stuck in the ruins, I should be able to push it. Thinking of this, the man's muscles swelled up once again, and power continued to accumulate in his body. However, just as the man's power had accumulated to the maximum, and he was about to push his hands toward the assault boat, a terrifying tearing sound rang out. Then, under the man's disbelieving and panicked gaze, a pair of arms tore apart the exterior of the assault boat and reached out. How is this possible? The man cried out. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.